She left him without a word 8 years ago. Tonight, her patrol car is stranded on his road in a blizzard, and the little girl sleeping in his truck is the daughter she never knew existed. Caleb Mercer kept his mouth shut while this town buried him alive. But the woman who destroyed his life is about to learn that the quietest man in Ridge Hollow has been waiting a long, long time for this exact moment. Stay with me until the very end. And if you're watching, drop a like and tell me in the comments what city you're tuning in from. The snow came down the way it always did in Ridge Hollow. Slow at first, almost polite, then all at once like somebody upstairs had finally lost patience with the whole valley. Caleb Mercer saw it start through the cracked kitchen window while he was rinsing a coffee cup that had a chip in the rim big enough to cut a lip. He'd been meaning to throw that cup out for about 2 years now. He never did. Throwing things out cost money he didn't have, and besides, the cup still held coffee. Most things in his life worked that way. Broken but functional, chipped but holding. Daddy. He turned. Lily stood in the doorway in a pair of footy pajamas that had been washed so many times the feet were nearly translucent. 7 years old, dark hair like his, a serious little mouth that he had never once seen on any other face, and he had studied a lot of faces trying to find where it came from. You're up early, Bug. The wind sounds mad. The wind's always mad. It's a wind. She patted across the linoleum and put her arms around his leg, the way she had since she was barely able to walk. He set the cup down and reached for her, lifting her up against his hip even though she was getting too big for it. He could still do it. He planned to still do it when she was 16 if she'd let him. You want oatmeal? No. You want oatmeal? No. You're getting oatmeal. Fine. He put her down, and she climbed up onto the chair with the phone book under it that made her tall enough to reach the table. The phone book was from 2011. Nobody printed them anymore. He kept meaning to get her a proper booster. He never did. The kitchen smelled like old wood and the faint ghost of bacon grease from a pan he'd used 3 days ago and hadn't gotten around to scrubbing. Outside, the wind shoved at the siding hard enough to make the picture frame shiver. One of the frames held a photo of his mother, taken a year before the cancer. The other held a crayon drawing Lily had made of the two of them. He had hung it in a frame like it was a Rembrandt. In his house it was. Daddy? Can we go see the horses today? The horses are not ours anymore, Lilybug. We talked about that. I know, but can we go see them? He stood with the wooden spoon in his hand, stirring the oatmeal slow. He didn't answer right away. The horses had belonged to the Mercer farm for 3 generations. His grandfather had broken them. His father had bred them, and Caleb had sold the last 4 of them 6 months ago to a man from 2 counties over who'd paid in cash and driven off without looking back. He had needed the money for Lily's medical bills. Her lungs were fragile. The insurance the county gave working farmers was the insurance they gave to people they expected to lose slowly. Maybe Saturday, he said. It's always maybe Saturday. Well, maybe Saturday's going to get here one day, and then you'll be real glad you waited. She considered him over the rim of her juice glass with the kind of patient skepticism a lot of grown women never managed. Okay, she said. He smiled at her. It wasn't a big smile. He didn't have a lot of those, but for her, he still had some. By 7:30, he had her bundled into the passenger seat of the old Chevy pickup with her backpack between her feet. The heater in the truck worked about half the time. This morning was a half-the-time morning, which meant warm air pushed up through the vents in little rattling gasps, enough to keep the windshield from freezing, but not much more. Lily didn't complain. She had never once complained about the truck, or the cold, or the oatmeal being a little lumpy, or the fact that her school lunch was a peanut butter sandwich and an apple 5 days a week. Other kids complained. His kid did not. He had decided a long time ago that was either a miracle or a warning, and some nights he lay awake trying to figure out which. The road into town ran along the ridge that gave the place its name. On a clear morning, you could see 15 miles from that ridge, pastures and woodlots, and the thin silver of the creek winding through. This morning, you could see about 100 yards. The snow was coming sideways. Daddy, slow down. I'm going 25, baby. Go 20. He eased off the gas. She watched the road like it was her job. Ridge Hollow Elementary was a squat brick building that had been new when Caleb's father was a boy and had not had a dollar spent on it since. He pulled up to the drop-off loop, and Mrs. Anderson, the aide, was already out there in a puffy coat the color of a traffic cone, waving kids in. She was maybe 60 and built like a retired linebacker, and she was one of the few people in this town who had ever treated Caleb with anything like warmth. "Morning, Caleb." "Morning, Mrs. A. You holding up?" "About the same." "Same's good," she said, and meant it. Then she crouched down to Lily's level and said, "Miss Mercer, you are going to be the prettiest snowflake this building has ever seen. You hear me?" Lily beamed. She had the school play coming up. She had a line, just one. She had been practicing it for 3 weeks in the mirror until Caleb had to gently tell her that the bathroom mirror did not need to hear it anymore. "Bye, Daddy." But why? Bye, Daddy." "Bye, Bug. I'll be here at 3. 3. 3. I promise." She nodded like they were closing a business deal, and then she was gone, swallowed by the puffy-coated crowd of other kids shuffling in through the double doors. He sat there a second longer than he needed to, watching the doors swing shut behind her. Then he turned the truck around and headed for work. Work was a 3-hour shift at Dolan's Feed and Hardware on the north end of town, unloading a delivery truck that would pull in at 8 sharp, followed by whatever Ray Dolan could find for him to do until noon. It wasn't steady. Nothing in Caleb's life was steady. The farm had him from noon till dark, and the shift at Dolan's kept the power on. In the summer, he picked up hours at the sawmill. In the fall, he helped a guy named Pete slaughter hogs. He had 4 jobs, and none of them really counted as a job. Ray Dolan was already out front smoking when Caleb pulled up. He was a heavy man with a face like a pile of bricks that had been rained on. He lifted his chin about 1/4 inch by way of greeting. "Truck's late." "Figured, with the snow." "Everything's late with the snow. Coffee's inside." Caleb nodded and went in. The store smelled like rubber boots and fertilizer, and the sour ghost of an old mouse somebody needed to find. He poured himself a coffee from the pot behind the counter and stood for a minute letting the warmth come back into his hands. The bell over the door jingled. In came Martin Crane. Caleb kept his eyes on the coffee. Martin Crane was a big man in Ridge Hollow in the only way a man could be big in Ridge Hollow, which was to say that he owned things. He owned the John Deere dealership. He owned 3 rental houses on Elm. He owned a piece of the bank, though nobody knew how much. And he was on the town council, and he had a voice that sounded like he was always 2 sentences into a speech he hadn't asked you if you wanted to hear. He was 58. He was the reason Caleb's father had lost the back 40 12 years ago, through a loan restructuring nobody but the lawyers had understood. "Mercer." "Morning, Mr. Crane." "Hell of a morning." "Yes, sir." "You still got that dog?" "No, sir." "What happened to him?" "He got old." Martin nodded like that was the natural way of things, which it was, and then he said, "Heard you were looking to lease out the south pasture." Caleb took a long swallow of the coffee. It was bad coffee. It had been bad coffee for so long that he had started to find the taste comforting, the way some people got about cheap beer. "I was thinking about it. I might be interested. For the hay. It's good hay ground." "It's decent hay ground." "It ain't great hay ground. I'd give you $250 an acre." Caleb set the coffee down. He looked at the older man over the top of the mug. $250 was maybe 60% of what the land was worth. 3 years ago, Caleb might have said yes, because 3 years ago he had still believed that men like Martin Crane were doing him a favor even when they were skinning him. He didn't believe that anymore. He had stopped believing it the afternoon he had walked into the hospital billing office and been told, very gently, by a woman with kind eyes, that if he did not pay $4,200 by the end of the month, his daughter's specialist would no longer see her. "I'll think about it, Mr. Crane." "Think fast. I've got other options." "Yes, sir." Martin went back out into the snow, trailing the cold behind him. Ray Dolan came in a second later, stamping his boots. He watched Martin's back disappear, and then he looked at Caleb. "What do you want?" "South pasture, $250. Ray snorted. $250 my ass. Tell him 4, tell him to walk." "Yeah." "You going to?" Caleb drank his coffee. "I'm going to think about it." Ray looked at him a second longer. Ray had known Caleb since Caleb was a boy bagging feed on summer afternoons. There was something Ray saw in him sometimes that made the older man shake his head, half confused, half something else. "You've been thinking about a lot of things lately, Mercer." "Yes, sir, I have been." The delivery truck pulled in at 8:20. Caleb unloaded it. The morning passed the way mornings passed. He stacked 50-pound bags of chicken feed until his shoulders burned. He helped an old woman named Edna Plank load 12 bales of straw into the back of her son's pickup, which took twice as long as it should have because Edna wanted to tell him about her hip replacement. He listened. He always listened. People in this town talked at Caleb the way they talked at a wall they trusted, and he had, over the years, learned more about the medical histories, marriages, and family feuds of Ridge Hollow than any one man needed to carry. At 11:45, Ray came up to him with an envelope. "Here. What's this?" "Your pay. I'm closing at noon. Nobody's coming in this mess." Caleb opened the envelope. It was a little more than he'd been expecting. He looked up. "Ray, don't say anything. Just don't. Buy the kid something warm." Caleb swallowed. He folded the envelope and put it in his inside pocket. "Thank you. Get out of here. Drive slow." "Yes, sir, Shasabgulbu." He drove slow. The snow had been serious all morning and was now getting personal. By the time he turned off the county highway onto the feeder road that led back up the ridge, the wipers were doing more smearing than clearing, and the visibility was maybe 40 yards. He had a cheap thermos of coffee on the bench seat next to him, and a sandwich Ray had pushed at him on the way out, wrapped in wax paper. He ate with one hand on the wheel. He had the radio on low. Some woman was singing about a man who had done her wrong. The reception kept cutting out. And then he saw the cruiser. It was nosed into the ditch on the right side of the road, about a half-mile up from the old covered bridge. The back end was sticking out at an angle that was going to be a real problem for anybody coming around that curve at any kind of speed. The light bar on top was flashing, weak red and blue pulses barely cutting through the snow. The engine looked to be off. Caleb eased off the gas and brought the truck to a stop, about 20 feet behind the cruiser. He left the hazards on. He sat there for a second, one hand on the wheel, looking at the silhouette through the cruiser's back window. One person. Driver's side. Not moving. He pulled his gloves on. He got out. The wind grabbed at his coat. He walked up to the driver's side, careful on the shoulder, and tapped on the glass. The officer inside jumped. She had been staring at her radio. She turned, and for a long second, Caleb Mercer's whole life stopped. It stopped the way a clock stops. It stopped the way a song stops when the needle is pulled off. There was no sound in the world except the wind, and the wind had gotten very far away. He knew her face. He had known her face for 15 years. He had known it first as a girl of 17, laughing at something he'd said on the steps of the Ridge Hollow Public Library. He had known it at 20, asleep on his shoulder during a long drive back from a concert in Columbus. He had known it at 23, pale and furious, telling him she needed space and she'd call him when she figured things out. She had never called. She had, as far as he'd known until this exact moment, left Ridge Hollow and never come back. Vivian Hale rolled her window down 2 inches and looked out at him, and her mouth opened slightly, and closed, and opened again. "Caleb." He did not say anything. "Caleb." He took one step back from the window. He looked at the cruiser. He looked at the ditch. He looked up the road and down the road, and then he looked back at her. "Your axle's done," he said. His voice came out level. He did not know how he had managed that. Some animal part of him, some part that had been digging trenches and stacking sandbags for 8 years, had stepped forward and was doing the talking. I couldn't get traction. I tried to back out." "You can't back out. You're in too deep. You're going to have to ride with me." "Caleb, I've got chains at the house. I can pull you, but not in this. You'll freeze before the wrecker gets here, if one's even running. Get your stuff." She stared at him. She was in a state trooper's coat, the gray one with the patches, not a county uniform, and her hair was pulled back tight under the flat-brim hat, and there was a smudge of something, maybe blood, on her temple from where she'd probably hit the side window when she went off the road. She was 32, same as him, and she looked it, and she did not look it. She had the same eyes. That was the worst part. She had the exact same eyes. "Caleb, Get your stuff, officer. I don't have all day." He turned and walked back to the truck. He got in. He sat with his hands on the wheel. He did not look in the mirror. He watched the snow drive itself against the windshield, and he breathed out, slow. And he did not let his hands shake, because he had made a policy a long time ago about his hands, and he was not breaking it today. The passenger door opened. She climbed in, stiff, hauling a nylon duffel and a thermos and a radio clipped to her shoulder that squawked once and went quiet. She shut the door. She smelled like the inside of a cruiser, which is to say coffee and vinyl and the faint metallic whisper of a service weapon. He put the truck in gear. "You got somebody you need to call?" "I called dispatch. They know." "Good." He pulled out. The truck fishtailed once and caught. He drove. For the first mile, neither of them spoke. He could feel her looking at him. He did not look at her. He drove the way he drove when Lily was asleep in the back seat, slow and deliberate, his hands at 10 and 2 like a driver's ed poster. It was not for her. It was because if he let his grip loosen even a little, he was going to do something he would regret for the rest of his life. And he had too many things already to regret. "You live up here now?" she said finally. "I live where I always lived. The farm. The farm. Your dad, dead, 6 years. I'm sorry." "Don't be. He didn't like you." It came out dry, almost a joke. It wasn't. Her mouth twitched at the corner anyway. He remembered that twitch. He remembered it the way you remember the shape of a house you grew up in. "I didn't know you were still here," she said. "Where else would I be?" "I don't know. Somewhere." "No, ma'am. Just here." A pause. He could hear her breathing. He could hear the wipers. He could hear the tires crunching the top crust of snow. "Caleb, I need to—" "No." "No what?" "Whatever it is. Not in this truck. Not today. I pulled you out of a ditch. That's what I did. Anything past that, you can take it up with someone else." She did not say anything for a while. He kept driving. The road climbed. The house came into view through the snow, gray wood, tin roof, the porch sagging a little on the north side where he'd been meaning to shore it up. The barn was behind it, bigger than the house, the paint nearly gone, a stand of oaks around the whole thing like a natural fence. He pulled up in front of the porch. He cut the engine. "Wait here. I'll get the chains." "Caleb?" "Wait here." He got out. The cold bit him through the coat. He walked into the barn, which was dim and smelled like hay and old diesel, and he stood there for a second with his hands braced on the workbench and his head down, and he let himself breathe, really breathe, for the first time since he had tapped on her window. His hands were shaking now. He let them. Then he stopped letting them. He straightened up. He got the chains off the hook. He got the tow strap. He walked back out. It took an hour in the snow to winch the cruiser out. She helped. She did not speak much. She handed him things when he needed them, handed. Once, when he was on his back in the ditch, looping the strap under the frame, she said quietly, "I'm sorry, Caleb. I'm so sorry." And he said, without looking up, "Hand me the hook." And she handed him the hook. When the cruiser was finally up on the road, one of the headlights was cracked and the front bumper was bent, but the frame was straight and the wheels turned. She stood there in the snow looking at it. Her radio crackled. She answered it, spoke for a minute in the clipped half language of people who talk to dispatchers, then clipped it back to her shoulder. "They're sending a wrecker from Millersburg, 2 hours, maybe 3. In this, it'll be 4. Yeah. You can wait at the house." She looked up at him. The snow was in her eyelashes. "Are you sure?" "No," he said. "But I'm not going to let you freeze on the road either. Come on." He put her at the kitchen table. He made coffee. It was better coffee than the stuff at Dolan's because she was here, and some small, stupid part of him that he had thought was dead had woken up and wanted to do a good job. And he hated that part of him with a clean and simple hatred, but he still made the good coffee. He set the mug down in front of her. He did not sit down. He leaned against the counter. She wrapped both hands around the mug. She had a ring on her left hand, a plain gold band. He had noticed it in the cruiser. He had decided not to think about it. He was still deciding not to think about it. "How long?" he said. "How long what?" "How long have you been back?" 6 months. He nodded slowly. "Where?" "Over in Claymont. I'm on the state patrol. This stretch is my beat Tuesdays and Thursdays. I've been avoiding this road." "You didn't avoid it today." "No." "Why?" "I had a call. Domestic on the Prescott place. I took it because nobody else could get up here. On the way back," she gestured vaguely at the window, at the snow, "and if you hadn't gone off the road, I would have driven past the turnoff to your farm the way I have every Tuesday and every Thursday for 6 months." "Right," he said. He looked at the window. The snow was coming harder, if that was possible. He was going to have to think about the chickens. He was going to have to think about whether the pipe in the mudroom was going to freeze again, because the insulation on it was bad, and he had not had the money to redo it. He was going to have to think about picking up Lily at 3. "I have to leave at 2:30, he said. "I have to pick up my daughter." She had just taken a sip of the coffee. She froze with the cup at her lips. "Your daughter." "My daughter." "You have a daughter?" "Yes." Her eyes changed. He watched them change. He had watched Vivian Hale's eyes change 100 times in his life, with laughter, with sleep, with arguments, with the kind of grief that had nothing to say for itself. He had never seen them do what they did in that moment. It was a look he did not have a name for. It was a look that made him, for the first time since he tapped on that window, feel a crack open somewhere in the ice he'd built himself inside of over the last hour. "How old?" she said. Her voice had gone very quiet. 7. 7. 7. She set the cup down. Her hand was not quite steady. "Her mother," Vivian said. "Not your business." "Caleb." "Not your business." She looked at the table. She looked at her hands. She looked at the ring on her finger, and he saw her left thumb touch the base of it, a tiny gesture, unconscious, and his stomach did something he did not like. "I understand," she said. "No, ma'am, you don't." Neither of them spoke for a while. The stove ticked. Somewhere in the house, a board settled. He had not moved from the counter. He did not trust himself to move from the counter. "Caleb," she said finally, "there's something I have to tell you." "I just said, it's not about me. It's about you. It's something you should have known 8 years ago, and I didn't tell you. And I have tried to figure out for 8 years how to tell you, and I haven't found a way. I'm not going to find one. I know that now, so I'm just going to say it, and you can do whatever you want with it. Throw me out. Don't look at me again. That's fine. That's fair. But I can't sit in this kitchen and drink your coffee and not say it." He did not answer. He stood very still. Outside, the wind pushed at the house. Inside, his heart was doing something rude and unwelcome behind his ribs. "Caleb!" The phone on the wall rang. They both jumped. She let out a small breath, almost a laugh, and put a hand over her face. He picked up the phone. It was a rotary. It had been his grandmother's. He had never had a reason to replace it. "Mercer." "Mr. Mercer. Hi, this is Mrs. Anderson at the school." "Yes, ma'am. We're closing early. The superintendent just called it. We need you to come pick Lily up as soon as you can, hon. The roads are getting real bad." "I'm on my way." "She's okay. She's just a little worried. She asked if you were driving safe." "Tell her I'm driving like an old woman." Mrs. Anderson laughed. "I'll tell her. You drive safe, Caleb." "Yes, ma'am." He hung up. He looked at Vivian. She had not moved. "I have to go get my daughter." "I understand." "You stay here. The wrecker finds you here fine. Coffee's on the stove. There's bread in the tin. I'll be back in an hour if I can get there and back." "Caleb, what I was going to... when I get back." His voice was flat. "If you're still here, you can tell me when I get back." He grabbed his keys. He grabbed his coat. He was at the door when she said it. "Her name was Emma." He stopped with his hand on the door. He did not turn. "Whose?" "Ours." The wind went quiet for a second. The whole world went quiet. It was the kind of quiet he had only experienced twice before in his life. Once when his mother died, and once the morning he had walked out to the mailbox after Vivian left and found no letter, and then no letter the next day, and then no letter the next, until he had finally understood that there was not going to be a letter. "What did you say?" "I was pregnant when I left. I didn't know. Not for sure. I found out 4 weeks after. I didn't..." "Caleb, please turn around, please." "No." "I lost her. At 22 weeks. There were complications. I was alone in a hospital in Cleveland. Stop. I couldn't come back. I couldn't face you. I couldn't face what I had done to you, to us, to her. I told myself you were better off. I told myself I had done you a favor. I told myself a lot of things, Caleb, and none of them were true. And I have thought about you every single day for 8 years, and I am so, so sorry. Stop." The word came out cracked. It was the first crack in his voice. He stood there with his hand on the doorknob and the snow coming down outside, and his daughter waiting for him in a warm brick building 6 miles away. And behind him, in his kitchen, the woman who had once been his whole life was telling him something that changed the shape of the last 8 years. He opened the door. The cold rolled in. "I have to get my daughter," he said. He did not look at her. He walked out. What? He drove. He drove slower than he had driven coming in. The wipers pushed at the snow. The heater rattled. His hands were at 10 and 2. His hands were always at 10 and 2. There was a policy about his hands. Somewhere around the old covered bridge, he pulled the truck over onto the shoulder. He put it in park. He sat there. He did not cry. He had not cried since the day his father had gone into the ground, and that had been a single tear that had embarrassed him, and he had not cried since. He did not cry now, but he put his forehead down on the steering wheel, and he closed his eyes, and he breathed, in through the nose and out through the mouth, the way his grandfather had taught him to breathe when a horse was spooking, and you needed to not spook back. A daughter. He had had a daughter before Lily. Her name was Emma. He had not known. He had not known for 8 years. He lifted his head. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, though his face was dry. He put the truck in gear. He kept driving. And somewhere, in the back of his chest, behind a door he had kept closed for a very long time, something that had been sleeping sat up. It did not rage. It did not weep. It looked around, and it started to count. It counted the men in this town who had laughed at him behind their hands when his father lost the back 40. It counted Martin Crane and his $2.50 an acre. It counted the woman at the hospital who had been kind and the woman at the other hospital, the one in Cleveland he had never been told about, who had not been kind enough to find a phone. It counted the 8 years. It counted the daughter he had never known, and the daughter he had, sitting right now in a too small chair in a too cold school waiting for her father to come get her. It counted, and it did not speak, because the thing that had just sat up inside Caleb Mercer was not a talker. It was a worker, and it had a lot of work to do. He pulled up to the school at 2:59. Lily was in the window. She saw him, and she waved, both arms, the way she did. He waved back. He got out of the truck. He went to get his daughter. Behind him, the snow kept falling on Ridge Hollow, burying everything that had been and everything that was about to begin. Lily climbed into the truck with the careful seriousness of a small person who had been told by the grown-ups around her that the weather was something to be taken personally. "The wind tried to take my hat," she said. "Did it get it?" "No, I held on." "Good girl." She buckled herself in. She was old enough now that she did not want help with the buckle, though she still needed help with it sometimes, and pretended she did not. She got it on the second try. She folded her hands in her lap like a passenger on a bus. "Daddy, your face looks funny." "My face always looks funny. Funnier than usual." "It's cold out." "That's not it." He pulled away from the curb and eased the truck back into the thin line of tracks that passed for a road. He did not look at her. He knew she was watching him. Lily watched him the way a dog watches a back door. She did not miss much. "Bug." "What?" "I had a hard morning at work." "Was Mr. Dolan mean?" "Mr. Dolan is never mean." "He was mean to Timmy Ricketts' dad." "Timmy Ricketts' dad stole a bag of dog food." "Oh." She considered this, solemn. "Then what was hard?" "I had to help somebody out of a ditch. In the storm." "In the storm. Were they hurt?" He paused at a four-way stop that was more of a suggestion than a stop, given that there was nobody else on the road for a mile in any direction. He looked at his daughter. "A little. Not bad." "Good." He turned. She was quiet for a while. Then she said, in the way she said things when she had been working them around in her head for a minute first, "Daddy, are you sad?" He did not answer right away. "A little, Bug, because of the ditch. Something like that." "Okay." She leaned her head against the passenger window. The glass fogged around her breath. She drew a small circle in the fog with her fingertip, and then a smaller circle inside it, and then a dot in the middle of the smallest one. An eye. He had seen her draw that eye 100 times. He did not know where she had gotten it from. He drove. The snow had slackened a little, from sideways to merely persistent, but the roads were worse because now what had fallen was starting to pack down into the kind of slick that a pickup with bald-back tires had opinions about. He took the long way home, the way that avoided the steep pitch by the Hodges place. And when he turned onto his own road, He slowed to a crawl and let the truck pick its own line. Lily hummed to herself. He did not recognize the song. He rarely recognized the songs she hummed. She made up a lot of them. The farmhouse came into view through the pines, gray and squat, the porch light on, because he had left it on, the way he always did when he knew he was going to be getting home after dark. He had left it on today because he had not been sure when he would be back, and some small part of him had wanted the house to look lived in, to itself, while he was gone. There was a cruiser in the yard. He had almost forgotten. He had not forgotten. He had put it in a box in his head and sat on the lid for 40 minutes. Now the lid came off. "Daddy, whose car is that?" "A police officer's." "Are we in trouble?" "No, Bug. She got stuck in the ditch. I brought her here to warm up until the wrecker comes." "Oh, okay." Her voice was neutral. Lily had met police officers at the school during safety week. She had found them to be, on the whole, acceptable. He pulled in slow next to the cruiser. The state trooper's car was nosed in toward the porch, the fresh dent in the bumper visible in the porch light. Behind it, the tracks from his own truck going out an hour ago had been almost filled in by the snow. He cut the engine. "Listen to me, Bug." "Okay." "The officer inside is going to leave soon. She is a grown-up I used to know a long time ago. She is not staying. Do not ask her a lot of questions." "Why not?" "Because I'm asking you not to." Lily looked at him. She had her mother's mouth. She had his eyes. She had the serious set to her jaw that she had come up with entirely on her own, independent of any human being who had ever held her. "Okay, Daddy. That's my girl." He got out and came around and opened her door. She slid down into the snow, and he took her mittened hand, and they went up the porch steps together. The boards creaked. The boards had always creaked. He had, as a boy, believed that if you went up those steps very fast, you could beat the creak, and he had spent an entire summer trying, and he had never once succeeded. He opened the door. The warmth inside hit him first. He had left the wood stove going. Vivian had not touched it, as far as he could tell, but she had banked the fire a little, which any farm-raised person did out of reflex, and which annoyed him because she had no business banking his fire. She was standing by the stove. She had her coat on. Her duffel was by the door. She had been about to leave, or she had been about to pretend she was about to leave, or she had genuinely been about to leave and lost her nerve. He couldn't tell which. He wasn't sure she could tell either. Her eyes went to Lily the second the door opened, and they did what he had been afraid they would do. They softened. They widened. They did the thing eyes did when a person saw something they were not ready to see. Caleb felt his free hand close into a fist at his side. "Lily," he said, his voice completely even. "This is Officer Hale. Officer Hale. My daughter, Lily." "Hi," Lily said. "Hi, Lily." Vivian's voice was careful. "That's a real pretty name." "Thank you. Is your head bleeding?" "Not anymore." "Good." Lily looked up at Caleb. "Daddy, can I have a cookie?" "There aren't any cookies." "There might be." "There are not any cookies." "Can I look?" "You can look." She peeled off her mittens, dropped them on the rag rug by the door, and padded into the kitchen. He heard the pantry door open. He heard her stand on the stool to see the top shelf. He heard her not find any cookies. He heard her not complain. He turned his eyes back to Vivian. "The wrecker. 40 minutes. Maybe more." "Then you've got 40 minutes. Caleb?" "I don't want you talking to her." "I wasn't going to. I don't want you near her. I don't want you looking at her. I don't want you asking her questions. You're in this house because I don't leave people on the side of the road in a storm. You are not in this house because of anything else. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Say it again." "I understand." He took his coat off. He hung it on the hook. He walked past her into the kitchen. Lily was standing on the step stool in front of the open pantry, her nose wrinkled up in concentration. "Told you." "I saw a box." "That's cornstarch." "What's cornstarch?" "It's for when gravy doesn't know what to do with itself." She considered this. "Does gravy ever know what to do with itself?" "Not usually." She giggled. She climbed down. He caught her under the arms at the last step and set her on the floor, and she wrapped her arms around his waist, briefly, the way she did when she was testing whether he was still there, and then she let go and went to the sink to wash her hands for no particular reason. He did not look at Vivian. He could feel her at his back, in the doorway of the kitchen, the way a man can feel a thunderhead 50 miles off. Bug, I want you to go upstairs and get changed out of those snow pants. Why? Because they're wet and you're going to get the floor all wet. The floor's already wet. Go, Lily. His tone was a hair sharper than he'd meant. She looked up at him with that quick, hurt flicker of a child who was never spoken to sharply and then was. It undid him for a second. He crouched down in front of her. Hey, I'm sorry. Daddy's tired. Please go on upstairs and change, and I'll make you some tea with honey in it, okay? With a lot of honey. Sinful amount of honey. She smiled, pacified, and ran off. Her footsteps on the stairs had a particular rhythm that he had been listening to for 7 years, and that he could have picked out of any other footsteps in the world. When she was gone, he stood up, and he turned, and he looked at Vivian. Kitchen. She followed him in. He shut the door behind her. It was not a real door. It was a swinging door with a hinge that had been squeaking since 1987, but it was enough of a door to make a point. He stood with his back to the counter. He crossed his arms. Talk. Caleb, You started out there in the other room. You said there was something I should have known. You said her name. You can finish. Here. Here. Your daughter is upstairs and is not a part of this. Keep going. Vivian set the palm of her hand flat against the counter. She steadied herself on it. He noticed her fingernails were bitten down. They had never been bitten down when he knew her before. She had always had long, strong nails she filed on Sundays. I didn't know until 4 weeks after I left, she said. Her voice had no shake in it now. She had found the tone she was going to use to get through this, and she was using it. I took the test in a gas station bathroom outside Pittsburgh. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 2 hours. I was 23. I had no job. I had walked away from the only good thing I had ever had in my life. I was so ashamed of myself I could barely breathe. Good. I drove to Cleveland because my cousin lived there. I slept on her couch. I got a job waitressing. I went to a clinic, Caleb, not that kind, a regular clinic, and they did an ultrasound, and I heard the heartbeat, and I... Don't. You asked me to talk. I asked you to talk. I did not ask you to paint me pictures. Fine. She took a breath. She tried again. I was going to come back. I swear to you, Caleb, I was going to come back. I told myself I was going to come back at 12 weeks. Then I told myself 16. Then I told myself I would wait until she was born. I was going to put her in a car seat and drive her to the farm and knock on your door and let you hate me as long as I got to hand her to you. But at 22 weeks, I started bleeding at work. They took me to the hospital. I was there for 6 days. She did not make it. She was a real baby, Caleb. They let me hold her. He did not move. He did not breathe. He felt a thing happening in his chest that he had not felt in a very long time. It was not grief exactly. Grief he knew. Grief was a long-term tenant. This was something sharper. Why didn't you call? Caleb, why didn't you call? I couldn't. That is not an answer. I know. Try again. She looked at the floor. She looked at her own bitten-down hands. She looked anywhere but at him. I was a coward. Yes. I thought if I called you, I would ruin you. I thought if you knew you would come up there and you would stand in that hospital lobby and you would look at me like I was the reason she was gone, and I couldn't. I couldn't live through that. I couldn't live through that and her both. So I decided I would carry it by myself. I decided I would carry it so you didn't have to. And then once I had decided that, I couldn't undecide it. A year went by, then 2, then 5. The longer it got, the more impossible it got. You decided, he said. You decided what I got to know about my own daughter. Yes. You decided what I got to grieve. Yes. You decided for me. Yes, Caleb, I decided for you. I had no right. I know I had no right. I have known for 8 years that I had no right. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to understand. I'm telling you because you asked. And because if I didn't, I was going to walk out that door and live with it for the rest of my life. And I am too tired, Caleb. I am so tired. She was not crying. He noticed that. Some small, cold, analytical part of him noticed that. She had decided she did not get to cry in his kitchen, and she was holding to it. He respected it and hated it in the same breath. He pushed off from the counter. He walked past her to the window over the sink. He put his hands flat on the counter, and he looked out at the yard. The snow had slowed. The cruiser was out there, dented. The light bar dark now, his own tracks curving in. Lily's small boot prints from the passenger side of the truck to the porch. He had had a daughter. He had another daughter. The two facts sat in his chest side by side, not canceling each other out, not merging, just sitting there. He had the strange thought that if he had known about Emma, Lily might not exist. He had gotten together with Lily's mother a year after Vivian left, in the lowest, most hollow period of his life. Sarah had been a bartender in the next county over, pretty and mean, and with a laugh like a window cracking. She had left when Lily was 8 months old. She had left a note on the refrigerator and the diaper bag by the door, and she had gone to Florida with a man named Kyle. He had not heard from her in 6 years. Lily did not ask about her anymore. She had, for a while. She didn't now. If Emma had lived, if Vivian had come back, Lily would not be upstairs right now, changing out of wet snow pants, humming a song she had made up. He could not make that math make sense. He refused to try. Caleb, don't. Can I say one more thing? No. Please. He did not turn. Make it fast. I have wanted to tell you for 8 years. I have rehearsed it in my head 1,000 times. I have written letters I didn't send. Every one of them was wrong. I thought if I just stayed away, it would be a kind of quiet apology. That was another thing I was wrong about. There is no such thing as a quiet apology. There is only an apology or a silence. I chose silence. I chose it again and again. I am choosing different now, and I know different is 8 years too late. And I am not asking for anything. I am not here for anything. If you want me to get in that cruiser and drive down your road and never come up it again, I will do it. Just tell me. I'll do it. Upbeat. He stood at the window. He thought about telling her to go. He thought about how easy it would be. 2 words. She would put her coat on. She would take her duffel. She would walk out the door and she would drive away, and the snow would cover her tracks by morning, and in a week he would be able to pretend this day had been a dream. He thought about the cruiser sitting out there with its dented bumper and its radio that would cut in and out, and about the road she would have to drive on, and about the dispatcher who had told her help was 3 hours out. And he thought about what kind of man he would be if he put a woman, any woman, back out onto that road before a wrecker got to her. Even this woman, especially this woman, because if he sent her away now, he would have sent her away because he could not handle what she had said. And he was not going to give her the satisfaction of being the thing he could not handle. Sit down, he said. What? Sit down at the table. I'm going to make my daughter tea. You're going to sit there. You're going to not say anything else. When the wrecker comes, you're going to get in that cruiser and you're going to leave. And whatever we are to each other after today is a thing I will decide on my own time, in my own way. Is that clear? Yes. Sit down. She sat. He put the kettle on. He got down the mug Lily liked, the one with the blue flowers on it that had been his mother's. He got the honey. He moved slowly, because moving slowly was a way of keeping himself together, because if he moved fast, he was going to break something, and he did not have the money to replace anything he broke. He heard Lily coming down the stairs. Daddy, the thing in my ear is itchy again. Tell me about it in a minute, bug. She came into the kitchen in dry pajama pants and a sweatshirt that had been his and was enormous on her. She climbed onto her chair. She looked at Vivian, sitting at the far end of the table, and then at her father, and then back at Vivian. Are you staying for dinner? No, sweetheart, Vivian said. Her voice was gentle. It was the voice of a woman who had clearly decided she was going to speak to this child as little as possible, and when she did, with great care. I'm leaving as soon as the tow truck comes. Oh, is your car broken? A little. My daddy can fix anything. I bet he can. He fixed the washing machine with a spoon. It was a screwdriver, Bug. It looked like a spoon. It was a screwdriver. Vivian's mouth did the twitch again. The one at the corner. He hated that twitch. He hated that his body still recognized it. He poured the hot water over the tea bag. He stirred in the honey. He set the mug down in front of his daughter. Careful. Hot. I know. He sat down. He did not sit next to Vivian. He sat next to Lily. He put his hand on the back of Lily's chair. For a minute, nobody said anything. The wind pushed at the house. The stove ticked. Lily blew on her tea. Officer Hale, Lily said. Yes. Have you ever shot somebody? Lily. I'm just asking. No, sweetheart, Vivian said. I haven't. Have you been shot at? Lily. I've been shot at once, Vivian said. A long time ago. It missed me. Caleb looked at her. Go on and drink your tea, Bug. What happened to the guy who shot at you? He got arrested. Good. Lily drank her tea. Caleb drank nothing. Vivian looked at her hands. There was a long time where the only sounds in the kitchen were the sounds of the kitchen. The fridge hummed. The fridge had hummed like that since he was 12. A can would probably be cheaper than a new fridge, but he had not bought the can. Officer Hale. Lily, let her drink her coffee. Lily. Sorry, Daddy. It's okay. Finish your tea. Outside, somewhere down the road, the wind shifted. He heard faintly a diesel engine under it. He knew that engine. Every farmer in the county knew that engine. It was Dwight Mallory's wrecker. Dwight had been pulling cars out of ditches on this ridge for 30 years. He had pulled Caleb's father's truck out of a ditch once, and he had pulled Caleb's truck out twice, and Caleb had a small, private, unreasonable hope that Dwight would turn out to be the same man in all of it. That's him, he said. Vivian stood up. She moved like a person who had just been given permission to leave a room. She went for her coat. I'll need to write up the assist, she said. I'll need a name for the report. Caleb Mercer. I know. Then why did you ask? Force of habit? Put me down as a passing motorist. Caleb? Passing motorist. That's what I am. That's what I was to you when you left. Passing motorist. She stopped with her coat halfway on. He regretted it as soon as he said it. Not because it was unfair. It was entirely fair. He regretted it because his daughter was in the room. He regretted it because the word left had arrived in the kitchen without him controlling it, and Lily had heard it, and Lily was now looking back and forth between the two of them with an expression he did not like. Daddy? Yes, Bug. Did Officer Hale leave you? He did not answer right away. A long time ago, yes. Is that why you're sad? Not today, Bug. Today I'm not sad. You are. I'm a lot of things today, Lily. Sad is just one of them. She accepted this with the grave nod of a small accountant. Vivian was at the door. Her coat was on. Her duffel was in her hand. Her radio squawked and she answered, short, to Dwight, who was apparently now pulling up the drive. Mr. Mercer, she said. Formal. She was doing it on purpose. She was doing it for Lily. He saw that. He almost appreciated it. Officer, thank you for the assist. Drive safe. I will. She looked at Lily. It was nice to meet you, Lily. You too. She opened the door. The cold came in. She stepped out onto the porch. She paused. She turned, one gloved hand on the frame. Caleb? What? She looked at him. She opened her mouth. She closed it again. She closed the door gently behind her, and she went down the porch steps, and he heard her speak to Dwight, and he heard Dwight's big laugh, because Dwight laughed at everything, and he heard the chains clank. He sat back down at the table. Lily looked at him. Finish your tea, Bug. Okay. She finished her tea. She did it quietly. She did not ask any more questions. After a while, she reached over and put her small hand on top of his, on the scarred wood of the table, and she patted it twice, the way a person pats a dog who has had a hard day. He did not cry. He did not cry because his daughter was in the room, and because there was a policy about his hands, and because he had made a decision somewhere on the drive home that the kind of grief he was carrying now was not a grief he was going to set down where anybody could see it. But he let his hand turn under hers, and he closed his fingers gently around her small ones, and he sat there with his daughter while outside in his yard, a tow truck hooked up to the cruiser of the woman he had once been going to marry and dragged it down the long gravel drive and out of sight. When the sound of the diesel was finally gone, he made them both grilled cheese sandwiches. Lily ate hers at the table with a book propped against the napkin holder, a chapter book about a girl who rode a bicycle across the country with a dog. She had been reading it for 2 weeks. She was not a fast reader. She was a serious one. She made a little crease between her eyebrows when she read and moved her lips on the harder words, and she did not like to be interrupted. He let her read. He ate his sandwich at the counter, standing up, looking out the window at the yard. When she was done, she brought her plate to the sink. She washed it. She had started washing her own plate when she was 5, and she had never stopped, because she had seen him wash his, and she had decided that was what you did. She had not been taught. Nobody had sat her down. She had watched. "Daddy." "Yeah." "I'm going to go play in my room." "All right, Bug. If you need me, you can come get me." "Okay." "Even if it's for a hug." He turned around and looked at her. "Especially if it's for a hug," he said. She nodded, satisfied, and padded upstairs. He stood at the sink a long time after she was gone. Then he went out into the barn. The barn at the Mercer farm had been built in 1948 by his grandfather, and added to by his father, and patched by Caleb in more places than he could count. The hayloft door was loose. The siding on the north side had a gap a man could slide a hand through. The foundation had settled in one corner, and the whole building leaned a fraction of an inch west, as if thinking about something. He went in and stood in the middle of it and breathed the smell of it, which was hay and wood and old leather, and a whisper of the diesel from the tractor that hadn't run right in 2 years. Then he went to the workbench. Under the workbench, bolted to the underside of the top, was a small metal box. It had been his father's. His father had kept receipts in it. Caleb had, over the years, come to keep a different kind of thing in it. He opened it. Inside there was a stack of papers. Bank statements. A copy of the loan agreement his father had signed with Martin Crane's cousin at the First Valley Savings in 2014. A handwritten list, in his own handwriting, of every man and woman in this town who had, in the last 8 years, done him a specific wrong. The list was 3 pages long. Martin Crane was on it. The loan officer at First Valley was on it. A man named Hal Sunderman, who had been his father's best friend for 30 years, and who had not, when the farm was in trouble, offered so much as a phone call, was on it. A woman named Margaret Ellis, the principal of the elementary school, who had, 4 years ago, refused to enroll Lily in the pre-K program because Caleb had been 3 weeks late on the fee and had not let him explain why. He had walked Lily home through 2 miles of February cold and taught her numbers himself that year at the kitchen table with a piece of chalk and a scrap of slate. She was on the list. There were others, small entries. The cashier at the IGA, who had held up his WIC check at the register and made him explain to the woman behind him in line what the squares were for. The men at the diner who had laughed, not quite quietly, the day his father's auction notice had run in the paper. He had never done anything with this list. He had started it 4 years ago, the night he'd walked Lily home from the school. He had told himself he was making it just to get it out of his head. He had told himself he would throw it in the stove. He had not thrown it in the stove. He had, instead, every few months added a name or added a note next to an old name, or pulled the box out late at night and read it and put it back. He read it tonight, slow. When he was done, he set it on the workbench. He got a pencil from the jar of pencils. He did not add a name. He did not add Vivian to the list. He had thought he was going to. Walking out to the barn, he had thought he was going to. She was not on the list. She had done him a wrong that dwarfed most of what was on those pages. But as he stood there with the pencil, he understood that she did not belong on it. Vivian was something else. She was not on a list. She was her own category. He did not yet know what that category was. He had the rest of his life to figure it out. What he did do was draw a small, careful star next to Martin Crane's name. Then, beneath Martin Crane's name, in his tight, blocky handwriting, he wrote $2.50 an acre. He put the pencil down. He stood there a long time. The wind moved in the rafters. Somewhere in the hayloft, a barn owl shifted on its perch, and one pale feather drifted down and landed on the workbench next to his hand. He picked it up. He turned it between his fingers. His father had told him once, when he was a boy, that the reason the Mercers had kept their farm for 3 generations when most of the others in the valley had lost theirs was not because the Mercers were smarter, or richer, or luckier. "It's because we are patient, son," his father had said. "We wait longer than other men. We are willing to wait a very long time." Caleb had not, as a boy, understood that. He had thought his father was making an excuse for being slow. He understood it now. He put the feather in the metal box, on top of the list. He closed the box. He slid it back under the workbench. He looked around the barn. This barn, he thought, is going to need a new roof, and the tractor is going to need a new clutch, And the south pasture is going to need to be fenced properly because there is good hay money in it if you do it right. And he was not going to sell it to Martin Crane for $250 an acre, and he was not going to sell it to Martin Crane for $400 an acre, and he was, in fact, not going to sell it to Martin Crane at all. He was going to cut that hay himself. This summer, with borrowed equipment if he had to, with a hand scythe if he had to. He was going to bale it, and he was going to sell it at market, and he was going to put the money in a separate account, not his farm account, not his household account, a new account at a bank in a different county where Martin Crane's cousin did not sit on the board. And that was going to be the first brick. He did not know yet what building he was putting it in. He did not have to. A man laid bricks before he drew blueprints. You started with a brick, and you laid it flat, and you leveled it, and you put another one next to it, and eventually a wall happened, and then another wall, and then a building. His grandfather had said that about barns. He had been right about barns. Caleb suspected he was right about a lot of other things. He went back to the house. Lily was in her room, on her stomach on the rug, with 2 stuffed animals and an overturned shoebox that was, as far as he could tell, a theater. She was putting on a play for an audience of 1 patient dog and 1 patient bear. The play was about a princess who was also a veterinarian. It was complicated. "Daddy?" "Yeah." "Do you want to watch?" "Yes, ma'am." He sat down on the floor next to her. His back complained. He ignored it. She did her play. It went on for a while. The princess saved a horse. The horse could talk. There was a villain who was a wolf. But the wolf had a reason, which turned out to be that the wolf's feelings had been hurt. The princess forgave the wolf. The wolf got a snack. The play ended. "What did you think?" "I thought it was one of the best plays I've ever seen in my life. Better than the one about the mermaid. Tied with the one about the mermaid." "That's fair." She leaned against his shoulder. He put his arm around her. Outside, the snow had stopped. He could see, through her window, a piece of sky coming clear, and 1 early star in it, sharp and white. "Daddy." "Yeah, Bug?" "That lady, Officer Hale. What about her?" "She looked at me funny." "Did she?" Like she was going to cry but was not going to. He was quiet. "Do you know why?" "I know why, Bug." "Will you tell me?" "Someday, not today." "Okay." She was quiet. Then she said, "Is she coming back?" He did not answer for a long time. Outside the window, the star was getting brighter as the sky darkened behind it. Somewhere down the valley, a dog was barking, steady, like it had a reason, and was going to keep telling whoever needed to hear. "I don't know," he said, finally. "Do you want her to?" He looked down at his daughter, at her dark hair, at her serious mouth, at the small chapped place on her lower lip where she had been worrying it with her teeth, at the smudge of dried honey on her chin, at the whole absurd, specific fact of her. "I don't know that either, Bug." She nodded, as if that were a perfectly acceptable answer, and leaned harder into him, and they sat there on her rug with her stuffed animals, and the quiet house around them, and the cleared sky coming on, and he held his daughter and thought about the other daughter he had never held, and about the list in the metal box in the barn, and about Martin Crane's voice this morning saying $250 an acre like he was doing a favor, and about Vivian Hale's headlights disappearing at the end of his drive. He did not cry. He held his daughter. He breathed in, and he breathed out. And somewhere deep and patient, the thing that had sat up inside him that afternoon began, quietly, to walk. The thing that walked in him that night did not sleep. Caleb lay in his bed with 1 hand behind his head and the other flat on his stomach, and he stared at the ceiling and listened to his daughter's breathing through the thin wall between their rooms. Lily slept the way she did everything, seriously. She did not thrash. She did not talk. She lay on her back with her small hands folded on her stomach like a person laid out for a wake, and she drew long, even breaths. And sometime around 3 in the morning, she would roll once onto her side, and then she would not move again until 7. He listened to her breathe, and he did arithmetic. He had, in the farm account, $1,142. He had, in the household account, $306. In the metal coffee can on top of the refrigerator, he had $220 in cash, which was the envelope Ray Dolan had given him this morning, plus the change he had been saving in a glass jar for 6 months. In the upstairs closet, behind his father's old hunting coat, He had a roll of bills that came to 700 exactly, which he had been setting aside 120 at a time against a medical bill he did not want to think about. He had therefore about $2,400 in the world. The tractor needed a clutch. The clutch with labor was 12. The roof on the barn needed, at minimum, 2 squares of asphalt and a long afternoon from a man he could trust, and a man he could trust was another 8. The south pasture, if he was going to cut it himself, needed a rebuilt sickle bar on a mower he did not own, which meant borrowing from Pete Alford, which meant trading labor, which meant 2 weekends in Pete's hog lot helping him weld new panels, which meant 2 weekends when Caleb would not be on his own farm, which meant finding somebody to watch Lily, which meant Mrs. Anderson, who would not take money, which meant he owed her one more thing he could not pay back. He added it up. He broke it down. He added it up again. At 4:15 he got up. He did not turn on the light. He went down the stairs by feel, skipping the 4th step, which creaked, and the 7th, which was worse. He pulled on his boots in the dark by the door and his coat from the hook, and he stepped out onto the porch, and the cold was the clean, flat, pre-dawn cold of a valley after a storm, and the snow in the yard was blue in the thin light off a clouded moon. And somewhere out beyond the tree line, a coyote was talking to another coyote about something neither of them was going to settle tonight. He walked out to the barn. He lit the lantern. He got the metal box out. He sat on an overturned feed bucket with the box on his knees, and he opened it and he took out the list. He read the list. He read it again. Then, in the small, careful block letters he used for anything he wanted to be able to read in a hurry, he started writing on the back of a feed receipt. He wrote, South pasture, cut it, bale it, sell it to Nestor Grain in Keene, not Dolan's. He crossed out Dolan's because Ray had been good to him, and he wrote, talk to Ray first. See if he wants first look at fair market. He wrote, tractor clutch, ask Pete, trade labor. He wrote, barn roof, tarp for now. Full fix April. He wrote, fire insurance, check. He wrote, Lily insurance, call county Monday, get her on the chip list properly this time. Do not let the woman at the desk scare you off. He wrote at the very bottom, do not talk to Martin Crane again unless he comes to you. He looked at the list. It was a small list. It was not a plan for an empire. It was a plan for a man to not drown for 90 days, and then, at the end of those 90 days, to have his head far enough above water to decide where to swim. He folded the paper in half and put it in the inside pocket of his coat. He closed the metal box. He blew out the lantern. He stood in the dark barn a minute longer, breathing the smell of it, and then he went back to the house, and he put a pot of coffee on for when his daughter woke up, and he started his day. Flat. By the time the sun broke over the ridge, he had shoveled the porch, the path to the barn, the path to the chicken coop, and the 10 feet of driveway he could manage before his back told him to stop. He had fed the 4 laying hens and the 1 old rooster that everybody had been telling him for 2 years to cull, and that he had not culled because his father had given him that rooster, and he had broken the ice on the water bucket, and he had come in and heated up the coffee. And at 6:30, he went upstairs. Lily was already half awake. She had her eyes open, but she was playing dead, a game she had invented 2 years ago and had not gotten tired of. He sat on the edge of the bed. She did not move. Bug! No answer. I see you breathing. No, you don't. There you go. She sat up and flopped against him, still half in the sheet. Her hair stuck out in a configuration that violated several laws of physics. Is it a school day? Not today. They're still closed. Can we go see the horses? No, Bug. We've talked about... I know. Can we go anyway? He looked at her. She looked at him. 7 years of him and her negotiating terms, both of them tired, both of them a little stubborn, both of them loving the other more than either of them was going to say out loud before lunch. We can drive past the fence, he said. We can stand at the fence. We cannot go inside. And we cannot cry if the horses aren't in the paddock. I won't cry. You cried last time. I won't cry this time. We'll see. Bob. They ate oatmeal. He put extra brown sugar in hers because extra brown sugar was a currency that was legal tender in their house, and he had something he was about to cash in on. Bug, I'm going to do something today, and I need you to be brave. What? I'm going to drive to town and talk to a man about some things. What man? Pete Alford. The one with the pig that won the ribbon. That's him. Okay. And then later this week, I am going to drive over to Keene and talk to a man about some hay. Okay. And later this month, I'm going to drive to a different town and talk to a woman about opening up a new bank account. Are we getting rich? He laughed. He did not laugh often. It surprised them both a little. No, Bug, we are getting organized. Oh, is that better? It's the step before. She considered. Okay, she said. I can be brave for organized. That's my girl. Get that solid? At 8, he dropped her at Mrs. Anderson's because Mrs. Anderson had offered the night before over the phone, and because there was nowhere else in the world he trusted his daughter more outside of his own kitchen. Mrs. Anderson opened the door in a housecoat the color of a fire engine and an apron over it that said, "I'm the boss." Boss. And she scooped Lily up like a sack of potatoes Lily had long since outgrown being scooped like, and Lily squealed with delight in a way she never did anywhere else. Because Mrs. Anderson had known how to make her squeal like that since she was 2. You go do your man things, Caleb. Yes, ma'am. She and I are going to bake. Don't let her eat the dough. I will absolutely let her eat the dough. Mrs. A. Goodbye, Caleb. She closed the door on him gently. He stood on her stoop a second, grinning in spite of himself. Some women in this town had decided 20 years ago that Caleb Mercer was a project, and they had not yet agreed to be told he was not one. Mrs. Anderson was the chief among them. He did not argue with her anymore. He had learned. He drove to Pete Alford's. Pete Alford lived in a single wide out past the old creamery with 300 hogs and a blue heeler and a son in the Marines. Pete was 51. Pete looked 70. Pete had a face like a road map somebody had folded wrong and a laugh that started in his knees. He was one of maybe 4 men in Ridge Hollow that Caleb would have trusted with his wallet, his truck, or his daughter, in that order of difficulty. Pete was already out at the feed bins when Caleb pulled in. He looked up. Well, Pete, come to help me with these fence panels? Funny you should say that. Pete set the bucket down. He came over, wiping his hands on a rag that looked like it had not been cleaned since 1998. What's up, Mercer? I want to borrow the sickle mower, the one with the bent bar. It's bent. I know. I ain't fixing it. I know. I'll fix it. Pete studied him. Pete's eyes were pale, and the whites of them were always a little red, and he did not blink as much as other men. It was part of why people misjudged him. It was part of why Caleb had decided years ago not to. South pasture? Yes, sir. You going to cut it yourself? Yes, sir. That's a lot of acres, Caleb. I know what it is. With a bent bar. I'll straighten it. With a rebuilt head. I'll rebuild it. With whose welder? Yours, if you'll trade me. Pete looked at him some more. Then he said, Come on inside. Well, Pete's kitchen was dim and smelled like coffee and bacon, and faintly like hogs, because nothing in Pete's life did not smell a little like hogs. He poured Caleb a cup from a pot that was older than Lily and sat down across from him at a table with a piece of pegboard laid over the top of it because the actual tabletop had been a casualty of Pete's divorce a long time ago. Talk. I need your sickle mower and your welder and a couple of weekends of your shop. I'll cut for you on whatever you need done around here. I'll weld those panels. I'll help with your hogs if you want, though I'd rather not. Nobody wants to help with my hogs. I'll do it if I have to. Noted. Pete, I'm going to cut that pasture clean, bale it tight, and haul it to Nestor and Keene before Martin Crane knows it's on the ground. And when Martin comes at me about it, I'm going to smile and I'm going to tell him the land is in use. Pete's face did something. It was very small. It might have been a smile. With Pete, you could not always tell. Martin come at you already? Yesterday morning, $2.50 an acre. Son of a bitch. I told him I'd think about it. Thinking about it is a nice way to say no. I know it is. He knows it is. He's going to find out what no feels like the long way. Pete drank his coffee. He set it down. He looked out the little window over the sink for a minute. Your daddy, he said slowly, would be glad. Don't, Pete. I ain't buttering you. I'm telling you the truth, and then I'm going to shut up. Your daddy never fought that man. He knew he should have. He didn't. He carried it till it killed him. You do this right. You hear me. You do it quiet, and you do it legal, and you don't ever, not one time, threaten that man in public. You understand? Yes, sir. You let him be the one who looks like a fool when he finds out the hay's gone. You do not stand on his porch. You do not raise your voice in the diner. You let a man with money make his own mistakes. You follow. I follow. Then yes, you can have the mower. Thank you, Pete. Don't thank me. I've been wanting to see you do this for about a decade. He drove from Pete's to the bank in Claymont. Claymont was 25 miles over the ridge, a town about the size of Ridge Hollow, but with a bigger grain elevator and a different sheriff, and a bank that was not the First Valley Savings. The bank in Claymont was called Miners Trust, and it was a small brick building with a plastic deer in the front window wearing a sweater, because the teller, a woman named Angie Whitlock, dressed the plastic deer seasonally, and in February the plastic deer got a sweater. Caleb walked in and he stood at Angie Whitlock's window and he said, "Ma'am, I'd like to open a checking account, just in my name, for farm income." Angie looked up. Angie had been a senior when Caleb was a freshman. Angie had not thought about Caleb Mercer in probably 15 years. She pushed her glasses up her nose and said, "Sure, hun, got your ID?" He put his license on the counter. She filled out paperwork. She asked him standard questions. He answered them standard. She did not ask him why he wanted an account at her bank instead of First Valley. She did not need to. Miners Trust was 30 miles from Martin Crane's cousin's office, and that was why Caleb was there. And Angie Whitlock probably knew it, and if she did not care. She ran her own business. She printed him temporary checks. She handed him a little plastic card that he could, starting in 2 to 3 business days, use to get his money out of a cash machine. He had never had one of those in his life. "Anything else I can do for you, Caleb?" "No, ma'am." "Thank you. Welcome to Miners." He drove back with the plastic card in his wallet and his temporary checkbook in the glove box. He picked Lily up from Mrs. Anderson's at 4. Lily had flour on her forehead and was carrying a tin of sugar cookies that weighed nearly as much as she did. She had eaten some of the dough. Mrs. Anderson winked at him over her head. She was an angel. She always is. "Don't lie, Caleb." "Yes, ma'am." They went home. Lily ate 3 cookies and half a grilled cheese and then fell asleep on the couch with her boots still on, and he took them off for her and put a blanket on her and went to the kitchen. The phone rang. He stared at it for 2 rings before he picked it up. He didn't know why. Maybe because he hadn't answered a phone yet today without Ray Dolan or Mrs. Anderson on the other end, and now he felt the first one pulling up to the curb that wasn't going to be either. "Mercer." "Caleb." He did not say anything. "It's Vivian." "I know it's you." A pause. "I wanted to make sure you got through the storm all right." "We did." "And Lily?" "She did." "Good, good. Vivian." "Yeah." "How'd you get this number?" "It's in my report. I pulled the report." "Right." "Caleb, I know I said I wouldn't." "You didn't say you wouldn't. You said I could decide. You said you'd wait for me to decide." "I did say that." "Okay, so I'm sorry. For calling today, yes." He breathed out through his nose. He looked at his daughter asleep on the couch. He looked at the snow outside starting up again, gentle this time, like a person apologizing. He thought about hanging up. He thought about telling her to never call again. He thought about telling her to come over for dinner. None of the 3 was a thing he was ready to do. He had the peculiar sensation of standing in the middle of a road he had once known every inch of and not being able to remember which way his own house was. "Are you on shift?" he said finally. "No, I'm at home. I'm off tonight." "Where's home?" A pause. "A rental on 4th, in Claymont. Little gray house with a crabapple out front." "Alone?" "Yes." "The ring?" "It's my grandmother's. I started wearing it when, I don't know, about 4 years ago. I don't know why I said that. It's my grandmother's. I'm not married. I'm not seeing anyone." "I didn't ask that." "You asked." "I didn't." "You did, Caleb." He realized she was right. He had. "I didn't mean to," he said. "I know." A long moment. "Why'd you call?" he said. "Because I didn't sleep." "Okay." "Because I sat up all night thinking about her." "Lily." "I sat up thinking about her face. I sat up thinking about yours. I sat up thinking that for 8 years I have been telling myself a story about who you were, and that story was wrong in every single particular. I saw you for an afternoon yesterday, and I understood that the story I had been telling myself was a story I had made up to live with what I did. And I didn't sleep, and I called. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. I'll let you go. Don't hang up. He said it before he decided to. She did not hang up. They sat on the line a while, neither of them speaking. He could hear her heater clicking in the background. He could hear, faintly, a television in another room of her house, probably a neighbor through the wall. He wondered what her house looked like. He wondered what she had on her walls. He wondered if she had pictures. He did not want to wonder any of this. What do you want, Vivian? Nothing. Everybody wants something. I don't want anything from you, Caleb. I have no right. Then why'd you call? Because I wanted to hear your voice. He closed his eyes. Vivian, I know. You don't get to... I know. You don't get to come back here after 8 years and call my house and tell me you wanted to hear my voice. You don't get that. You understand me. I understand you. Then why did you say it? Because it was true, and I have spent 8 years lying, and I am not doing that anymore. I will not lie to you about anything ever again, Caleb. That is not an offer. That is a rule I am making for myself. You can do whatever you want with it. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. Don't call me again this week. Okay. I'm not saying don't call me again. I understand. I'm saying not this week. I understand, Caleb. All right. All right. Good night, Vivian. Good night, Caleb. He hung up. He stood there a long time with his hand still on the receiver. 3 days later, the storm had broken and the plows had been through, and Ridge Hollow came out of its houses to do what it always did, which was gossip. And Caleb made the first move that was, later, when people tried to tell the story, the move they pointed to as the beginning of the thing nobody had seen coming. He drove to Ray Dolan's. He walked in. Ray was at the register eating a cruller out of a paper bag. He looked up. Mercer, you want hours? No, sir, I'm not here for hours. Okay. Ray, I'm cutting the south pasture this summer. Ray stopped chewing. Yourself? Yes, sir, with Pete Alford's mower. That bent one. I'm straightening it. Ray set the cruller down. How much you think you'll put up? If the weather holds, 700 bales. That's a lot of hay. Yes, sir. Where are you selling? I wanted to ask you first. Ray leaned back. His chair creaked. Ray looked at Caleb for a long minute. You're going to Nestor. Yes, sir, if you don't want it. I can't match Nestor. I know you can't. That's why I came to you first. Now, why'd you do that? Because you gave me an extra $20 in my envelope 3 days ago that you didn't owe me, and because my daddy came to your daddy for 40 years, and because if I ever sell hay out of this valley without asking you first, I'm going to owe you an answer, and I don't owe you anything I don't mean. Ray Dolan looked at him. Son. Yes, sir. Who lit a fire under you? Nobody, Ray. Somebody did. Nobody I'm going to name. Ray Dolan nodded slowly. I'll take 200 bales, my own price. You sell the rest to Nestor, and you tell Martin Crane nothing, and you tell the diner nothing, and you cut at night if you have to. Yes, sir. Caleb. Yes, sir. Good. He cut at night, not that night. Not for months. It was February. The pasture was under a foot of packed snow, but the word went up in Caleb Mercer's head like a hand-lettered sign, and it stayed there. When the time came, cut at night. In the meantime, he did what he had always done, which was the work in front of him. He fed the chickens. He patched the siding on the north side of the barn with scrap plywood and tar paper. He tarped the worst of the roof. He helped Pete Alford weld fence panels on 2 Saturdays and did not complain about the smell. He rebuilt the sickle bar on Pete's mower in the little shop behind Pete's single-wide with his coat off and his sleeves rolled up even in the February cold. And when he was done, the bar was straighter than it had been when Pete bought it, used in 2003. He picked Lily up every day at 3. He made her oatmeal. He made her grilled cheese. He read her the chapter book about the girl on the bicycle, because she was too tired to read it herself at night, and they finished it on a Wednesday. and the girl got home to her mother, and the dog got to sleep on her bed, and Lily fell asleep on his shoulder halfway through the last page, and he kept reading until the end in a whisper anyway, because he was that kind of father. He thought about Vivian Hale every day. He did not call her. She did not call him, not after that night. She kept her word. She had said, "Don't call me this week," and she had heard it, and she had gone quiet. And as the quiet went on, from 1 week to 2 to 3, he began to understand something about her that he had not understood before, which was that the Vivian Hale who had stood in his kitchen and told him about Emma was not the same Vivian Hale who had left him 8 years ago. The girl who had left was a girl who had been afraid. The woman who was staying away now, with her plain gold ring that was her grandmother's, was a woman who was patient. He did not know yet whether patient was better. He suspected it was. He was not sure he wanted it to be. On the last Thursday in February, he went into town for fuel and milk and a pair of new laces for Lily's boots. And on his way out of the IGA, he saw Martin Crane. Martin was at the gas pump at the Marathon across the street, filling up a Cadillac Escalade with a dealer tag on the back. He was wearing a shearling coat that had never been within 50 miles of actual sheep. He saw Caleb. He raised his hand. Caleb raised his. Martin waved him over. Caleb crossed the street. The little thing inside him that had been walking since the night of the storm stood up a little straighter. It did not speak. It did not need to. It had been preparing for this moment for weeks. "Mercer? Mr. Crane. I was going to call you. Is that right? I need that pasture under contract by April. I've got my cutter scheduled." $250's still on the table. You going to give me an answer today, or are we going to dance some more? Caleb put his hands in his coat pockets. He looked across the street at the IGA. He looked at the plow piles along the road, stained with road sand and dog pee and the general color of a town recovering from a February it had not earned. He looked at Martin Crane, 60 years old now, a man with a face that had always had a little too much confidence in it, and that had today about a thimbleful more than it should have. "Mr. Crane," he said. "Mercer. I'm going to cut that hay myself this year." Martin looked at him. "Yourself?" "Yes, sir." "With what?" "With a mower I have arranged for." "With what tractor?" "With my own tractor." "Your daddy's tractor don't run." "It will by May." Martin Crane let out a short laugh. It was not a kind laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had been telling himself a story for a long time, and the story was that Caleb Mercer was a soft, tired boy with a sick kid and a failing farm, and the laugh was the sound of that story meeting a piece of information that did not fit it. "Mercer, I'm trying to help you here." "I appreciate it. You cut that pasture yourself, you're going to lose your shirt. You know what baling costs now. You know what the fuel is. You're going to be upside down by June." "I might be." "And then where will you be?" "Same place I am now, Mr. Crane, with one more summer of work behind me." Martin stared at him. The laugh had gone out of his face. Something else had come into it. It was the beginning of the thing Caleb had been waiting to see. It was the small, surprised twitch of a man who had, for the first time in the 12 years he had known Caleb Mercer, understood that he was not talking to the man he thought he was talking to. "Son," Martin said, slow, "you don't want to make an enemy of me." "No, sir, I don't." "Good. I don't want to make an enemy of you because I don't want to make an enemy of anyone. I've got a daughter. I've got a farm. I've got time. That's all I've got. I'm going to cut my own hay, Mr. Crane. I'm sure you'll find another pasture." "There aren't other pastures like yours." "Then you'd better go looking, sir." He tipped his cap. He did not shake Martin Crane's hand. He did not raise his voice. He did not at any point cross the small line that Pete Alford had warned him about in his kitchen. He crossed the street back to his truck, and he got in, and he drove out of town, and behind him Martin Crane stood at the gas pump with the nozzle in his hand and a face gone the color of wet cardboard. The little thing inside Caleb Mercer, the thing that had been walking since February 14th, sat down quietly in his chest and watched the road unroll and did not say one word. It was too early for words. It was time for bricks. He told Lily that night at dinner because he had decided he was going to tell her things now, small things, appropriate things, things a 7-year-old could hold. He was not going to raise her the way his father had raised him, which was by deciding everything about their lives in silence and announcing it by what arrived in the mail. Bug. Yeah. I turned down a business deal today. Did you lose money? Yeah, some. Was it a bad deal? It was a fair deal, but the man was not fair. Was he mean to you? He was not mean. He thought I was somebody I'm not, and I decided I'd rather lose the money than be the person he thought I was. Lily chewed her broccoli slowly. She was a thorough chewer. Then she said, Daddy. Yeah. I think that was the right thing. Thank you, Bug. You're welcome. She ate. He ate. Outside, somewhere in the pines, an owl called once and went quiet. That weekend, on a Saturday, Vivian called. He let it ring 3 times before he picked up. He was not, he realized, surprised. He had been waiting for her to break her silence, and she had, at exactly the point he would have predicted, 3 weeks and 4 days after he had told her not to call him this week. A woman with a feel for timing. He had forgotten she had that. Mercer. It's me. I know. Is this okay? Yes. Caleb, I want to ask you something. You can say no. I need you to know you can say no. Ask. I'd like to see you for coffee. In town somewhere, any town. Not at your house, not in any place that would be awkward for Lily. Just you and me. In daylight. In public. For an hour. He looked at the yard. He looked at his daughter, out in the snow, building what she called a snow mountain, which was different from a snowman because it had no face and therefore no opinions. She was wearing her boots with the new laces. She was fine. She was happy. She was safe. He thought about how to answer. He could have said no. It would have been easy. 2 weeks ago, it would have been easy. Yesterday, it would have been easy. Something had shifted, though, somewhere between the list in the metal box and the gas pump across from the IGA. He did not yet know what had shifted. He only knew that when he tried to make his mouth form the word no, it did not form the word no. Next Saturday, he said, 10 a.m., the diner in Eastport. Not here, not Claymont. Eastport, 1 hour, public booth. You bring nothing, and you ask for nothing, and I bring nothing, and I promise nothing. That's the deal. I accept. Good. Caleb? What? Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He hung up. He stood at the window and watched his daughter build her snow mountain. He did not know what he had just agreed to. He did not know what he was walking toward. He did not know yet that 300 miles of telephone lines and 4 county sheriffs and 1 envelope of 14-year-old documents from a First Valley loan file were about to come into his life in ways he had not yet imagined. He knew, standing at the window in the late winter afternoon light, only this: he was not going to be the man they thought he was. He was not going to be the man his father had been, the man who had carried it until it killed him. He was not going to be the boy who had stood on a porch 8 years ago reading an empty mailbox day after day until he figured out there was not going to be a letter. He was not going to be a $250 an acre kind of man. He was going to lay bricks, one after the other, for as long as it took. Outside, his daughter in her new laces shouted up at the house, "Daddy, come look!" He put his coat on. He went out to look. He stood next to her in the snow and admired her mountain, which was as serious a piece of architecture as any mountain he had ever seen. She leaned against his leg. He put his hand on the back of her head. The sun was going down behind the ridge. The snow was pink at the edges. The air smelled like pine and wood smoke and the faint iron tang of a valley that was starting, slowly, to turn. "Is it good, Daddy?" "It's the best mountain I've ever seen." "Better than a real mountain." "Tied with a real mountain." "That's fair." He stood with his daughter in the snow and watched the light go. And inside him, the quiet worker picked up another brick and laid it and leveled it and reached for another. The light went that night the way it always went in the valley in late February, fast at the end, and by the time Lily had knocked the top off her snow mountain out of some instinct a 7-year-old architect apparently had about not letting her work outlive the day, the stars were already up over the ridge, hard and white and plentiful. He made her hot chocolate from the envelope packets that cost 29 cents at the IGA. He made his own coffee. They sat at the kitchen table and she drew a picture of the mountain she had just demolished, from memory, in crayon, with a small stick figure of herself next to it, and an even smaller stick figure of him, and a son in the corner that was, by convention in her drawings, always smiling. Daddy? Yeah, Bug. On Saturday, you're going somewhere. He looked at her. He had not told her about Saturday. He had thought about how to tell her, and he had decided he would tell her Friday night, because 7-year-olds did not need to hold the weight of a thing for a whole week, and also because he had not, as of this moment, entirely worked out what he was going to tell her. How'd you know that? Because you had your thinking face on when you were washing dishes. What does my thinking face look like? Like this, she demonstrated. She pulled her mouth into a small, tight line and narrowed her eyes and frowned at the refrigerator. It was an unsettlingly accurate impression. He laughed in spite of himself. Do I really look like that? All the time. Lord, that's embarrassing. He caught himself. He did not use that word in his house. He said instead, that's mortifying is what that is. She beamed, pleased at having made him laugh twice in the same week. Then she said, still calm, still patient, so where are you going? I'm going to have a cup of coffee with somebody in Eastport. Who? Officer Hale. She considered this. She did not ask a follow-up immediately. She sipped her hot chocolate. Then she said, is that a date? No, Bug. Do you want it to be? I want it to be a cup of coffee. Okay. And Mrs. Anderson is going to come sit with you for an hour. Will she bring the dough? She will not bring the dough. Ask her. I will not ask her. Fine. She went back to her drawing. She added, next to the stick figure of her father, a third stick figure slightly shorter than him with long hair. She did not comment on this addition. He did not either. He did not know what to say about it. He sat there and watched his daughter put the third figure on the paper, and he did not say anything, and she did not say anything. And after a while, she got down from the chair, and she put her cup in the sink, and she went upstairs to brush her teeth, and the drawing stayed on the table. He looked at it a long time. Then he folded it in half and put it inside the cover of the chapter book they were not reading anymore, because they had finished it. He did not know why he did this. He did it anyway. That week he did the work in front of him, and he also began, quietly, to do a different kind of work. It started with a phone call to a man named Owen Whitaker, who lived down in Columbus and who had been 2 years ahead of Caleb in high school. Owen had, in high school, been a nobody. He had been a skinny, angry boy with bad teeth and a mother who drank, and his senior year he had beaten the tar out of a kid named Jason Kinnick for knocking Caleb's books out of his hands in the hallway, and Caleb had, a week later, spent a Saturday helping Owen fix the transmission on Owen's mother's Ford Taurus so she could keep her job at the diner, and neither of them had forgotten it. Owen was now, by whatever strange twist lives took, a paralegal at a civil practice in Columbus. Caleb had his number because Owen had called him 2 years ago, out of the blue, on Christmas Eve, and had told him in a single 30-second phone call that if Caleb Mercer ever needed anything legal, to pick up the phone, and had hung up before Caleb could answer. Caleb picked up the phone. He called Owen at 5 on a Tuesday. Whitaker. Owen. Caleb Mercer. A pause on the line. Well, I'll be damned. Mercer. How you been, Owen? I've been a lawyer's dog for 3 years. How the hell are you, brother? Breathing? Everything all right? Depends on how you mean. I mean, is your kid all right? My kid's all right. Then I'm listening. Caleb leaned against the counter. He took a breath. Owen, my father took out a loan in 2014 with a man named Curtis Crane over at First Valley Savings, Ridge Hollow branch. Curtis Crane is Martin Crane's cousin. Martin Crane is a man in my town. The loan was restructured in 2016. The restructuring cost my father the back 40 acres of our family farm. My father signed papers I do not believe he understood. I was 22 at the time. I have copies of everything. I kept them in a metal box in a barn. They have been sitting in that box for 12 years. Okay. I want to know if anything in those papers was illegal. Send them to me. Owen Mercer. I am a paralegal, not a lawyer. I'm also a man who has been waiting for an excuse to look at something like this for about 5 years because my firm has a partner, a woman named Rachel DeLuca, who eats small-town bank fraud for breakfast. And if there is anything in those papers, any language at all that does not line up with state lending law in the year 2014, she will find it and she will like finding it. Send them to me. I can't afford her. You don't have to afford her yet. You send me the papers. I read the papers. If I don't see anything, I call you, and I tell you I don't see anything, and we forget about it. If I do see something, I walk it into Rachel's office, and she either takes it or she doesn't. And if she takes it contingency, because she is that kind of lawyer. And if she doesn't take it, I still never send you a bill, Caleb, because a man fixed my mother's Taurus on a Saturday in 1997, and I will be paying him back for that for the rest of my natural life, whether he likes it or not. Caleb looked at the floor. Owen? Send the papers, Mercer. Okay. Priority mail. Keep the copies. Tracking number. Sign for it. Okay. And Caleb? Yeah. Don't tell anybody. Not your best friend, not your mailman, not the woman you are probably, at some point, going to tell. Nobody. You understand? I understand. Good man. Send the papers. He hung up. Caleb stood at the counter for a long time. He sent the papers Thursday out of the post office in Eastport because he was not mailing anything interesting out of Ridge Hollow. The woman behind the counter did not know him. She weighed the envelope, stuck a tracking label on it, and gave him a receipt, and he paid in cash. He kept the receipt in his wallet behind Lily's school picture. Friday night, he told Lily he was having coffee with Officer Hale in the morning, and Mrs. Anderson was coming to sit. She nodded solemnly, as if he'd told her the weather report, and asked if she could have cold cereal for breakfast, and he said yes, and that was the end of that conversation. Saturday morning, he was up at 5. He fed the chickens. He ate 2 pieces of dry toast standing at the counter because his stomach had decided overnight that it was not interested in food. He drank black coffee. He shaved, which he did not do most Saturdays. He put on a clean flannel and the one good pair of jeans that did not have oil on them. He did not put on cologne because he did not own any. He did scrape some of the mud off his boots with a knife over the trash can, which was about as close to dressing up as he was going to get. He looked at himself in the little cracked mirror in the mudroom, briefly, and did not like what he saw, and did not have time to do anything about it. Mrs. Anderson arrived at 9 with a paper grocery bag. Dough, she said. Mrs. A. Do not argue with me, Caleb Mercer. It is Snickerdoodle Day. Yes, ma'am. Go. Be gone. Do not rush back. You look nice. That shirt washes better than the other one. Yes, ma'am. He kissed the top of his daughter's head. She was at the kitchen table already, with a coloring book. He ruffled her hair. He said, I'll be back by noon. Noon. I promise. Okay. He drove to Eastport. It was 40 minutes on a dry road, an hour in anything else, but the road was dry, and he did it in 37. The diner in Eastport was called Pauline's and had been called Pauline's since before Pauline herself had died, which had been sometime in the 80s. It was the kind of place where the waitress called you hon whether she knew you or not, and the coffee was hot, and the toast was never quite the color you asked for, and nobody minded. The booths were red vinyl. The vinyl had cracks in it that had been repaired with electrical tape that had been, in several cases, repaired again over the first electrical tape. There was a pie case. The pies in the pie case were real. He got there at 9:50. Vivian was already there. She was in the booth in the back corner, facing the door. She was in civilian clothes, a dark sweater and jeans, and a jacket folded on the bench beside her. Her hair was down. He had not, in the kitchen that day or on the phone, seen her hair down. It was longer than he remembered. She saw him come in, and she did not wave. She lifted her chin a fraction, the way a person did who wanted to be seen without drawing attention, and he walked back to her booth and he slid in across from her. Mercer, the waitress said, coming up with the pot. Morning, Carol. You eating? 2 eggs over medium, wheat toast, bacon. Bacon crisp. You know me. Ma'am, you having more of that tea? Yes, please, Vivian said. Nothing to eat. I'm not hungry. All right, hun. Carol moved off. The diner smelled like fryer grease and brewed coffee and the faint, comforting smell of maple syrup that had been warmed in a metal dispenser too long. A Garth Brooks song was playing on the speakers at a volume that was not quite intrusive. An old man 2 booths down was working a crossword and muttering to himself in a way that suggested he was losing. Vivian had both hands around her tea mug. Her knuckles were a little white. You look good, he said. He had not meant to say it. It came out. She blinked. Thank you. You too. I don't. You do, Caleb. We're not doing that. Okay? He drank his coffee. It was hot. It was too hot. He set it down. All right, he said. An hour. An hour. Start wherever you want. She looked down at her tea. She took a breath. I have a lot I want to say, she said. I've had 3 weeks to think about what I want to say. Everything I want to say is a thing I have said before, one way or another, in a kitchen or on a phone, and I don't want to say any of it again. So I'm going to try something else. Okay? I'm going to tell you what I've been doing for 8 years, not why. What? I think the what is the only thing I have any right to offer you, and you can decide if it is worth knowing. All right. I waitressed for 2 years. I worked at a diner not unlike this one. I cried in walk-in freezers. I got a cat. The cat died. I went to the State Academy when I was 25 because my cousin's husband was a trooper, and he told me I would be good at it, and I decided to believe him. I was the oldest person in my class. I graduated near the top. I worked 2 years in Youngstown. I worked 1 year in Canton. I put in a transfer to Claymont 18 months ago because I had a grandmother in a nursing home there, and I was the only grandchild she still recognized. She died last spring. I stayed. I could have gone anywhere. I stayed. I told myself I stayed because I liked the country up here. That was a lie. I stayed because I was running out of running. She took a slow breath. I see a counselor on Thursdays in Canton. I have been seeing her for 6 years. I take a pill every morning for anxiety. I do not drink anymore. I quit 4 years ago. I have never told another human being this in my life, except the counselor. I am telling you because you asked me once in a kitchen what I wanted, and I told you nothing, and that was not exactly the truth. What I want is for you to know who you are having coffee with. I do not want you to have coffee with the girl who left you. That girl is not at this table. She hasn't been for a long time. Caleb did not say anything. Carol put his plate in front of him. She refilled his coffee. She touched Vivian's shoulder lightly and moved off. Vivian looked at the waitresses retreating back for a second, as if she had forgotten other people existed. Then she looked back at Caleb. Your turn, she said. If you want it, you don't owe me anything. It's just, that was everything I had. He looked at his eggs. He picked up his fork. He put it down. I named her Lily after my mother's aunt, he said. Sarah wanted to name her Brittany. I said over my dead body. It was one of the last real fights we had. My mother's aunt was a school teacher. She never married. She lived in a little white house outside of Athens, Ohio, and she had a garden, and she told me once when I was 10 that the trouble with this country was that we had confused being loud with being right. That's where the name came from. Vivian's eyes did a thing. Sarah left when Lily was 8 months old. She left a note in a diaper bag, and she went to Florida with a man I'd never met named Kyle. I got a postcard from Pensacola 6 months later. It said, Tell Lily I'm sorry. I have not heard from her since. I have not tried to find her. I have not let myself wonder what I would do if she turned up. I have thought, in my worst moments, that if she turned up, I would not let her in the house. In my better moments, I would let her in the house and give her a cup of coffee and tell her Lily's favorite book was Madeline. In my best moments, I have decided not to think about it until I have to, because wondering about that woman is a thing I stopped letting myself do about 4 years ago. Caleb, I'm not done. Okay. I have spent 8 years being, in this town, the man whose girl ran off, and the man whose wife ran off, and the man whose father lost the back 40, and the man whose kid gets sick every winter. That's 4 stories, and none of them are me, and all of them are me. I do not have a story yet for who I am besides those 4. I was working on it. I have been working on it since I was maybe 26. It has been slow going. Last month, somebody took the lid off of it, and I discovered that a lot of the work I had been doing for 8 years had been done on the wrong foundation, and I have spent the last 3 weeks learning how to stand on the new one. That is the thing I am doing right now, at this table, with my eggs getting cold. I am standing on a new foundation. I do not know yet what I am going to build on it. I do not know yet whether you are going to be in the picture of what I build. I know that I am not going to make that decision at this table, today, with Carol on the coffee pot and a Garth Brooks song on the radio. Nobody should be deciding anything at this table. This table is for coffee and eggs. That's it. He picked up his fork. He started eating. Vivian watched him eat for a minute. She was not, he saw, going to cry. She had made some kind of decision about that a long time ago, and she was still holding to it. But her eyes had gotten wet, and she did not blink them dry, and she did not wipe them. She just let them be wet. And she held her mug with both hands, and she looked at him. "I want to say something about Lily," she said finally. "Carefully." "I will." "Then go." "I will never, Caleb, try to be anything to that child. Ever. I will not be your girlfriend in front of her. I will not show up at her school. I will not, if we end up in the same room twice, ever ask her a question that begins with the word, 'Do you remember?' I will not try to replace her mother. I will not try to be her mother. I will not try to make her like me. I'm not going to try to make her anything. She has one parent. That parent is you. Anything that happens between you and me, if anything does, is a thing that happens next to her life, not inside it. That is a rule I am making for myself. You do not need to enforce it. I will enforce it." He nodded slowly. "And if—" her voice did catch slightly on this one. "If at any point it comes up, and she asks me directly the question, I will tell her the truth. I will not tell her more than she asks. I will not volunteer any part of it. But I will not lie to her, Caleb. I cannot promise you she will never ask. Children ask things. She will ask it when she asks it, if she ever does. And when she does, I am going to tell her as much as she wants, and not one word more, and I'm going to tell it in a way that does not hurt her, and I'm going to get up afterward and leave her alone with it, because she will not want a stranger sitting there while she figures out what to do with it. You will be there. I will not. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good." He ate his toast. He drank his coffee. The old man with the crossword swore and turned the page. Carol came by with the pot. They both shook their heads. "Eastport," Vivian said after a while. "What about it?" "Why Eastport?" "Because nobody from Ridge Hollow comes here and nobody from Claymont comes here. They both go to the Waffle House on the interstate. Eastport is its own town. They don't like either of us, and they don't care." "That's a well-considered answer." "I have been considering it for a week." The corner of her mouth did the twitch. He did not look away from it this time. He let himself see it. It cost him something to let himself see it. He did not know yet what. He would find out probably in the next 6 months. They talked for the rest of the hour about nothing, which was, he thought later, the best part. She told him about her grandmother, who had been a mean woman her whole life and had, in the last 6 months, become inexplicably and inconveniently sweet. She told him about a call she had answered 2 weeks ago where she had had to deliver a calf at the side of Route 9 because the farmer was 81 and had rolled his ankle in a woodchuck hole. He told her about Pete Alford's pig that had won the ribbon and then escaped the pen 3 days later and been found in the middle of Main Street at dawn, licking the window of the bakery. She laughed, once, a real laugh, not loud, and the sound of it went through him like a guitar string somebody had forgotten they had tuned. At 10 to 11, he looked at his watch. "I have to go, Vivian. I know. Not because of anything. I know. Because I said noon. I know, Caleb. It's okay." He paid the bill. She tried to pay it. He shook his head. "I invited you. That's the rule in my house." "Your house isn't here." "I brought it with me." Outside the diner, the sun was out. The snow on the edges of the parking lot had gotten crusty and gray and was beginning in places to shrink. A robin was on top of a dumpster behind Pauline's, looking confused, because it was still February and he had no business being there. Caleb nodded at the robin. The robin ignored him. "Vivian." "Yeah. I'm going to call you next week." "Okay. One call, then we'll see." "Okay. Drive safe." "You too." She got in her car. He got in his truck. He watched her pull out. He waited until her car was around the corner and out of sight. Then he sat there a minute with his hands on the wheel and looked at the robin on the dumpster, and he thought about his daughter in a kitchen 26 miles away eating snickerdoodles, and he thought about a box of papers that was, right about now, being opened in an office in Columbus by a woman named Rachel DeLuca. He started the truck. He drove home. "Bummy." Owen called him on Wednesday. Caleb was out in the barn, degreasing the clutch housing on the tractor, his hands black to the elbows. when he heard the phone ringing in the house. He did not hear it ringing the first 5 times. He heard it the 6th because the wind had shifted. He jogged across the yard with his hands held out in front of him like a surgeon's, got through the door, grabbed the receiver with his elbow, and pressed it to his ear with his shoulder. Mercer. Caleb. Owen. You near a chair? Sort of. Go to one. He went to one. He sat down. He left grease on the wall above the phone. He could clean it later. Go. 2 things. First, the loan. The loan is ugly. It is not just ugly to me, it is ugly to Rachel, and Rachel has seen ugly. The restructuring in 2016 had 2 provisions that were, in the state of Ohio in that year, already under review by the Attorney General for constituting unfair lending practices in agricultural financing. Your father signed a document that, to be frank with you, a first-year law student could have told him not to sign. I'm not trying to hurt you by saying that. I'm trying to tell you what I'm looking at. Keep going. Second thing, the signature on the restructuring document, the one where your father gave up the back 40. It doesn't match his signature on the original loan. What? I'm looking at both signatures side by side right now. They are not by the same hand. The one on the original loan is your father's. I have 12 other documents with his signature on them that you sent along and they all match. The restructuring document does not match any of them. It is a copy of the original signature with small changes for the sake of appearance. My guess, and this is Rachel's guess too, is that the restructuring document was signed by somebody who had access to a scanned copy of the original and traced it over a light box. Or more likely, ran it through a certain kind of software that will do it for you if you have it. Either way, it is not your father's signature. Popul? Bisham Rashid. Caleb put a hand over his eyes. Owen. I know. Owen, my father. I know, Caleb. My father would never... I know, Caleb, listen to me. Rachel is taking this case. She is taking it contingency. She is going to subpoena a handwriting expert. She is going to depose Curtis Crane. She is going to file in civil court in Franklin County because that is where First Valley Savings' holding company is incorporated, not Ridge Hollow. And a Ridge Hollow judge is not going to touch this case. We are going to ask for the back 40 back. We are going to ask for damages. We are going to ask for punitive. We are going to ask for Curtis Crane's license. Owen? She thinks we have a good chance. Owen, if we bring this... I know what it does to your town, Caleb. I know what it does to Martin Crane. I know what it does to anybody in that town who ever signed a thing with Curtis Crane's bank, which is half your town. I know. Rachel knows. The question she wanted me to put to you is whether you want to proceed. Because once we file, Caleb, it cannot be taken back. You will not be able to close the door. You will be the man who opened this door on Ridge Hollow, and they will know you are that man by the end of the week we file. Caleb sat with his hand still over his eyes. He thought about his father, the last 6 months of his life, sitting in a hospital bed in Wheeling with a thing inside him that had been eating him for years, looking at Caleb and saying, in a voice that was already not quite his anymore, "Son, I'm sorry about the land. I am so sorry about the land." And Caleb, 26, holding his father's hand, had said, "Dad, it doesn't matter." And his father had said, "It matters, son. It always mattered. I should have fought him. I should have fought that man. I did not have the fight in me." His father had died 3 days later. Caleb had not, in the 6 years since, once let himself think about what his father had said about fighting that man, because he had not had the fight in him either. He had it now. "File it, Owen." "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Take the night. Think about it. I can hold till Friday." "Owen, file it." "Okay." And Owen, "Yeah. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We haven't won." "Thank you for calling. I'll call you when the complaint is drafted." "All right." He hung up. He sat at the kitchen table with grease on his hands and on the wall, and he did not move for a long time. The sun came through the window and moved across the floor in a slow rectangle. He watched it. He did not cry. He did not shake. He felt, instead, very still. It was the stillness of a man who had, after a long time standing in the middle of a field trying to remember where his house was, suddenly recognized the shape of a tree. Come on. He did not tell Vivian. He had said he would call her that week, and he did, on Thursday night, and they talked for 20 minutes about nothing in particular. She told him about a deer that had been standing in the middle of Route 9 for so long that morning that she had, eventually, gotten out of her cruiser and walked toward it waving her arms until it decided, with great dignity, to leave. He told her about Lily losing a tooth. He did not tell her about Owen. He did not tell her about Rachel DeLuca. He did not tell her about the signature. It was not that he did not trust her. It was that he had decided, standing in his kitchen with his hand over his eyes, that this piece of the work was his to do alone for now. She did not need to know. Mrs. Anderson did not need to know. Ray Dolan did not need to know. Pete Alford did not need to know, although Caleb suspected that Pete would figure it out on his own eventually, because Pete figured most things out on his own eventually. The only person who needed to know was the quiet worker inside his chest. The worker knew. The worker had more bricks to lay. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, Curtis Crane was served a subpoena in his office at First Valley Savings by a process server in a cheap suit in front of 2 tellers and an old woman who had come in to cash a Social Security check. The old woman told the whole town about it by supper time. The tellers told a smaller circle that was more accurate. By Thursday, everybody in Ridge Hollow who had a telephone and an opinion was talking about the lawsuit that had been filed against Curtis Crane and First Valley Savings in Franklin County Court. By Friday, they knew who had filed it. Caleb was at the register at Dolan's paying for a pound of 16-penny nails when Hal Sunderman walked in. Hal was 66. Hal had been Caleb's father's best friend for 30 years. Hal had not, when the farm was in trouble, offered so much as a phone call. Hal had not, at Caleb's father's funeral, stayed for the casserole. Hal had, in the 8 years since, nodded to Caleb at the post office and the gas station, and had not otherwise spoken to him. Hal walked up to the register. Caleb did not look at him. Mercer. Hal. I heard. I figured. Your daddy. What about him? Your daddy and I were friends. I know you were, Hal. I should have. Caleb looked up at him. He looked at Hal Sunderman's face, which was the face of a man who had, for 8 years, been living in a house with a thing he had not wanted to look at directly. He looked at the way Hal's hands were shaking, slightly, at his sides. He looked at the red rim around Hal's eyes. For a long second, he did not know what he was going to say. Then he said, quietly, Hal, go on home. This is not a conversation for in here. You want to say something to me, you come up to the farm on Sunday after church and you say it on my porch. You bring a bottle if you want. You don't have to, but not here. All right? Hal nodded. All right, Caleb. Sunday. Sunday. Hal left. Ray Dolan, behind the counter, did not say anything. Ray Dolan had heard the whole thing. Ray rang up the nails. He handed Caleb his change. Mercer. Yeah, Ray. Your daddy would be proud. Don't, Ray. I ain't going to. I just said it. Go on. He drove home. Lily was at Mrs. Anderson's because school had let out, and Mrs. Anderson had insisted on having her for the afternoon to work on the snickerdoodles. He drove slow. The road was dry. The trees along the ridge had not leafed out yet, but there was a softness in the air that had not been there last week. The first real softness of late March. The first suggestion that winter had finally agreed to loosen its grip. He passed the turn to the south pasture. He slowed. He looked at it. It was still under snow mostly, but in patches at the edges you could see the pale brown of last year's grass and the black dirt beneath it, and the shape of the fence line he was going to walk in April, post by post, replacing every sagging post and rotten rail with new ones. He did not stop. He just looked. Then he drove on. At the top of his drive, he stopped the truck. He sat there, engine idling, and he looked down the long gravel at his own house, gray wood and tin roof, the porch sagging a little on the north side, the stand of oaks around it like a natural fence. He saw the house the way a stranger would see it, for a second, and then the way his father had seen it, and then the way his grandfather had seen it. 3 generations of Mercer men who had looked at this house and this land and not known entirely what they were looking at, and not known entirely how to protect it. He thought he might be starting to know. He took his foot off the brake. He rolled down his drive. He parked. He got out. The phone was ringing inside the house. He could hear it through the closed door. He went up the porch steps, opened the door, crossed the kitchen, picked up the receiver. Mercer. Caleb. It was Vivian. Her voice was wrong. It was not panicked. It was not even sad. It was the voice of a person who had just been handed something unexpected and was trying, in real time, to figure out what the shape of it was. Vivian, what? I'm at the county clerk's office in Eastport. I was pulling a record for a call. I saw a name. I'm looking at a filing, Caleb, a civil filing out of Franklin County. He did not say anything. It's your name on it. He did not say anything. Caleb, yeah. Are you? Yeah, Vivian, it's me. A long silence. I'm not calling as a cop, she said carefully. I want to be very clear. I am not calling as a cop. I am off shift. I'm calling you as me. I just want to know if you're okay. That's all. He sat down in the kitchen chair. He looked at the grease stain on the wall from 2 weeks ago that he had, at some point, forgotten to clean. He looked at a crayon drawing on the refrigerator of a horse done by his daughter, and underneath the drawing, in his daughter's careful letters, the word Saturday. I'm okay, Vivian. Caleb. I am. I'm okay. This is a big thing. I know it is. Caleb, do you know what this does in that town? I know. Do you have help? I have a lawyer. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. A pause. He heard her breathe out, slow. Okay, she said. Okay. I am not going to ask you any more questions. I'm going to go home now. I'm going to make myself dinner. I am going to be at the end of a phone if you want to call me. Not tonight, whenever. That's all I wanted to say. Vivian. Yeah. Thank you for calling. Of course, Caleb. I mean it. I know you do. He hung up. He sat at the kitchen table. Outside, the sun was going down behind the ridge, and the last of the light was the pale, tired gold of a winter on its way out. And somewhere down the valley, a dog was barking, because dogs in this valley always barked at sundown, because that was what dogs did. He thought about Hal Sunderman on Sunday. He thought about Curtis Crane in an office somewhere tonight, looking at a piece of paper with his name on it. He thought about Martin Crane, who had not, as of this hour, contacted him directly, but who had, according to Ray Dolan's best information, been in the parking lot of the diner for an hour and a half at lunch, making phone calls from the front seat of his Escalade with the windows up. He thought about his father, in the bed in Wheeling, and what he would have said. He thought his father would have said, "Son, lay the next brick." He got up. He put the kettle on because he was going to drink a cup of tea at his own kitchen table, the way a man who had done a day's work drank a cup of tea, and then he was going to drive across town and pick up his daughter, and when he got her home, he was going to read her a new book. He had one waiting on the counter. He had bought it at the IGA with the change from the nails. It was a chapter book about a girl who ran a lemonade stand and learned over 80 pages that you did not get to choose who sat down at your counter, only how you poured the lemonade. He picked the kettle up when it whistled. He poured the water. He stood at the counter, the steam coming up off the mug, and he watched the light go out of the yard, and he laid, in the stillness of his own kitchen, one more brick. Hal Sunderman came up the drive on Sunday at 2:15, driving an old Silverado with a hood the color of a different truck than the body, and he carried in his left hand a paper grocery bag that was unmistakably holding a bottle. Caleb was on the porch when he pulled up. He had seen the dust over the trees before he had seen the truck. He had told Lily, after breakfast, that Mr. Sunderman was coming to talk to him for a while, and that she was going to stay inside and work on her puzzle. She had accepted this without question. She was getting good at accepting things without question. Sometimes this worried him, and sometimes it did not. Hal parked. He sat in the cab a minute, then he got out and climbed the porch steps, slow, and he set the grocery bag on the porch rail, and he stood there with his hands in his coat pockets, and he did not, for a long minute, look at Caleb. "You want me to sit?" Hal said finally. "If you want to sit." He sat. He took the bottle out of the bag. It was not expensive. It was not cheap. It was exactly the bottle Caleb's father would have brought if the situation had been reversed, because Hal and his father had drunk that exact brand at that exact price for 30 years. Caleb got 2 jelly glasses out of the kitchen and set them on the porch rail. Hal poured. Neither of them drank. "I'm sorry, Caleb." "I know you are, Hal. I was a coward." "Yes, sir." Hal did not wince. He just nodded once. Your daddy called me, Hal said. The week before he signed that paper. He called me from the kitchen. He said, Hal, Curtis Crane is fixing to take my back 40. He said, I don't know what to do. He said, will you come with me to the bank on Monday? And I said I would. I said I would, Caleb, I swear to you, and I did not go. I did not go because Curtis Crane came by my place on Sunday afternoon, and he sat on this exact kind of porch I am sitting on now, and he said to me in a friendly voice, Hal, you and I do a lot of business together, and it would be a real shame if your note got called due in a hurry. And I understood him, and I did not go with your daddy on Monday. I know that, Hal. Hal looked at him. You know, I've known about a year. How? My father kept a notebook. I found it 3 years after he died. There was an entry from that Sunday. He wrote, Hal did not come. He knew. I knew. I've been carrying it ever since. I did not think you were coming back from it. I still don't, maybe. I don't know. Hal put his face in his hands. Caleb let him. The wind moved in the oaks. Somewhere out past the barn a crow called, and another one answered, and a third one, far off, got in on it. The first real green was coming up in the yard, little scraggly points of it in the places where the snow had gone first, and the redbuds down by the fence line had begun the faintly violet blush that comes a week before they actually bloom. I can't make it right, Hal said into his hands. No, sir, you can't. What do you want me to do, Caleb? Tell me. Anything. I'll do it. Caleb looked at him a long time. Hal, I don't want anything from you. Caleb, I don't. That's not an invitation to feel better. That's the truth. I don't want anything from you. I don't need anything from you. I have not needed anything from you for 8 years, and I'm not about to start. If you want to come up here on Sundays and sit on this porch with me, you are welcome to. If you don't, that's all right too. I am not putting you on a list. I am not keeping you off one. I'm telling you the same thing I told Martin Crane at the gas pump, which is that I am going to keep doing my work, and the people who want to be near it can be, and the people who don't want to be near it don't have to be, and I am done, Hal. I am done trying to make anybody in this town choose. J'aime pas sentiment. Hal was crying now, quietly, into his hands, the way old men cried, which was the worst kind. Your daddy, my daddy is dead, Hal. He has been dead for 6 years. He is not in this deal. He would be proud. Maybe. He would. Maybe. But I'm not doing this for him, Hal. I loved him. I miss him. I am not doing this for him. I'm doing it for the kid in that house. Hal lifted his head. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. He looked in at the kitchen window. Lily was visible through it, at the table, bent over her puzzle with her tongue sticking out at the corner of her mouth. She looks like you, Hal said. She looks like her own self. That too. Hal picked up his jelly glass. He looked at the amber in it. He did not drink. He poured it carefully back into the bottle and put the cap on. I don't deserve this, he said. But, Hal, if you ever need a man to hold the other end of a fence line, or a man to sit on this porch while you drive down to Columbus, or a man to take a shovel to Curtis Crane's front walk in a blizzard, I am that man. I am going to be that man for whatever is left of my life. You do not have to ask. I will just know. I will ask your neighbors. I will drive by. I will figure it out. I will be that man, Caleb. That is the only thing I can offer you, and I am not offering it to make myself feel better, which is what you already told me not to do. I am offering it because I owe a man and the man is dead, and you are who he left behind. Caleb looked at him. He thought about how to answer. He thought about a dozen answers. He came up, finally, with the only one he could live with. Okay, Hal. Okay. I am not going to call on you. I know. I am probably never going to call on you. I know that too. But thank you. Hal nodded. He stood up. He left the bottle on the porch. He walked back down the steps and got in his truck and drove away. And Caleb sat on the porch with 2 jelly glasses of untouched whiskey and 1 bottle with the cap back on. And he thought about what his daughter was going to grow up in. She was going to grow up in a town that had, for 3 generations, been in the habit of choosing fear over loyalty. He had known that his whole life. He had not, he thought, really understood it until today. His father had not understood it either. Hal Sunderman had not understood it. Men in this valley had been, for 100 years, afraid of men like Curtis Crane, and the fear had been quiet, and the fear had been reasonable, and the fear had still been fear. His father had died of it. He was going to do his best for the remainder of his own life not to. He picked up the glasses. He went inside. Lily looked up from her puzzle. "Daddy, did it go okay?" "It went okay, Bug." "Is Mr. Sunderman sad?" "Yes." "Is it his fault?" "Some of it." "Did you tell him it was?" "I did." "Did you be mean?" "I was honest." "That's different from mean." "I believe it is." "Okay." She went back to her puzzle. He poured the whiskey down the drain. He washed the glasses. He put the bottle on the high shelf in the pantry, behind the cornstarch, where he would not see it, and where he would, one day, when he needed it, remember exactly where it was. Gis. The suit against Curtis Crane moved slowly, in the way that things moved in courts, which is to say, not at all for weeks at a time, and then all at once in a single afternoon. Rachel DeLuca called in April to say that Curtis's lawyer had tried to get the case moved back to Ridge Hollow and had been denied. She called in May to say that the handwriting expert had filed a report that went, as she put it, past conclusive into the territory of embarrassing. She called in June to say that Curtis's lawyer had asked for a settlement meeting. "What do they want to settle at?" Caleb said. "They want to give you back the back 40 and pay you $120,000. He sat down on the porch step. He had been pulling a weed out of the flower bed Lily had decided in April to start. He had a trowel in one hand. "That's a lot of money." "It's not enough." "Rachel, $120,000 is a lot of money to me." "I know it is. It is not enough." "Caleb, listen. I have seen the numbers. First Valley's exposure on this case, if we go to trial, is north of $400,000 in damages alone. That's before the punitive. The punitive could be anywhere. We could ask for his license. We could ask for the holding company's license to operate in 3 counties. I am telling you this not to get you excited. I'm telling you this because when I go back to his lawyer on Monday, I'm going to say no to 120. I want to know if you will let me." He looked at the trowel in his hand. He looked at the little green shoots coming up where Lily had, 2 weeks ago, planted seeds that had looked to him like they had no business coming up. "Rachel." "Yeah. I don't want his license." "What?" "I don't want to take Curtis Crane's license." "Caleb, hear me out. I want the back 40. I want what my father lost. I want a clean accounting, with interest, of every dollar that went out of that loan. I want, if there are other farmers in the valley who sign papers like my father's, for First Valley to have to find them and tell them. I want a letter from Curtis Crane, in his own handwriting this time, to my father's grave, acknowledging what he did. And I want a quarter of what he stole from us in punitive damages. Not half, not all. A quarter, donated to a farm aid fund at the state level. And I want my name nowhere near that donation. I don't want his license. I want the valley to get its hands on him." A long pause on the line. "Caleb," Rachel said slowly, "you are making my job harder. Can you ask for it?" "I can ask for it. Some of it I can probably even get." "Caleb, you understand this is a strategy decision that a lot of my clients would not be making." "I understand." "Why are you making it?" "Because if I take his license, he is a destroyed man, and he is the problem of his wife and his kids and his grandkids, and whoever has to drive him to the doctor when he's 75. If I leave him his license, he is a publicly humiliated man who has to sit at a desk in Ridge Hollow every day of the rest of his working life and be looked at by the people who know what he did. That is worse. That is what I want." Rachel laughed. It was a short, delighted, surprised laugh. "Mercer, you ever think about going to law school?" "No, ma'am." "Pity. I'll call you Tuesday." Check. By the time the hay went up in July, the valley had rearranged itself in ways most of the people in it had not quite tracked. Ray Dolan had extended Caleb a standing offer on all the hay he wanted to sell, at fair market, with a handshake contract. Pete Alford had quietly, in May, offered Caleb his sickle mower permanently, because Pete had, since April, been feeling well enough to buy a new one, because a lawyer Caleb had not met had, in March, gently reviewed the old mortgage on Pete's land and found 2 errors that had been, with a phone call, corrected in Pete's favor. Pete had not asked Caleb anything about this. Pete had simply, one Saturday morning, said, "That mower's yours, son," and walked away. Mrs. Anderson had begun, in June, dropping by on Wednesdays with a casserole, on the theory that a man cutting hay by himself in July was a man who was not eating enough. Caleb had tried, twice, to tell her he was fine. She had ignored him both times. He had, on the third Wednesday, set a place for her at the table and sat her down with Lily and eaten the casserole. Lily had asked Mrs. Anderson halfway through if she would teach her how to make a real pie crust. Mrs. Anderson had said yes before Lily finished the sentence. Hal Sunderman did not come back up the drive. Hal drove by, sometimes, on the county road, slow, looking at the fence line. Once in June, after a particularly bad thunderstorm, Caleb went out in the morning and found that 2 downed sections of rail along the road had been stood back up, and the top rails hammered back into place, and a pile of fresh 2x4s left next to the gate, with a note in pencil on a paper bag that said, "Had some extra." Hal. Caleb had left the note inside a book on the kitchen shelf, because some gestures deserved to be kept even if they were never quite answered. Curtis Crane resigned from First Valley Savings in the last week of June. The resignation was presented publicly as a voluntary retirement. Nobody in Ridge Hollow believed it. The Crane family, for the first time in 40 years, was not invited to give the opening address at the county fair in August. Nobody said why. Everybody knew. Martin Crane did not call. Martin Crane did not come around. Martin Crane stayed in his house on the hill above town and did not come down very much. And when he did come down, he went where he needed to go, and he did not look left or right, and he did not offer to buy any more pastures in the valley, and the dealership did not that quarter have the year it usually had. None of this, Caleb thought, standing at the edge of the south pasture in mid-July with a cold can of pop in one hand and Pete's mower at idle behind him, had felt the way he had expected it to feel. He had expected somewhere a moment of triumph. There was no such moment. There was only the work, one more long row of it, and at the end of the row another row, and at the end of the day the hay going up in good square bales, and at the end of the week 740 bales in the barn, 60 above what he had predicted because the yield had been better than anybody had guessed, and because he had cut it, as he had told himself he would, at the right time. He sold 200 to Ray Dolan at fair market, in cash. He sold the rest to Nestor Grain in Keene, also in cash, because a man in Keene he had never met had, somewhere along the way, heard his name and decided to pay on delivery. He deposited all of it at the Miners' Trust in Claymont, in the name on the plastic card in his wallet, and Angie Whitlock raised her eyebrows at the total, and then, because Angie was a professional, put her eyebrows back where they belonged and processed the deposit. He walked out of that bank in the July heat with his truck parked at the curb and a receipt in his pocket that said, more clearly than anything in his life had ever said, that a man with 2 hands and one good plan could, if he was patient enough, get out from under the thing that had been sitting on his father. He stood on the sidewalk a minute. He did not cry. He let himself feel, for about 30 seconds, the particular feeling he had not been letting himself feel since February. Then he put it away and got in the truck and drove to Mrs. Anderson's to get his daughter. Whoa. Vivian had been, all this time, on the edge of his life, and staying there, by her own rules and by his. And he had been calling her once a week, and they had been meeting once a month for coffee at Pauline's in Eastport, and they had not, any of those times, talked about any of it. They had talked about her grandmother, who had kept dying and not quite dying, right up until she did in July. They had talked about Lily's lemonade stand, which Lily had, after reading the chapter book about the lemonade girl, insisted on starting at the end of the driveway and which had, over the course of June and July, made $37, which Lily had put in a jar on top of the refrigerator, next to the one with the change in it. They had talked about Pete Alford's pig escaping again, a second time, twice as far. They had not talked about the lawsuit. They had not talked about Emma. They had not talked about whether they were, in any meaningful sense, going to become what they had, a long time ago, begun to be. On the last Saturday in August, Vivian came to Pauline's with her hair pulled back and with a look on her face that he had not seen on her in 6 months. He knew, before she sat down, what she was going to say. "You got the offer," he said. She sat down. She blinked at him. "How did you know?" "You've got the face on that you had the night you told me about Cleveland. It's the face you wear when you're about to tell me something you have rehearsed." "Oh. What is it?" Detective. In Columbus. Major crimes. They opened it 6 months ago. They came back around in July. It's a promotion, Caleb. It's my father's kind of job. He looked at her. He took a sip of his coffee. He put it down. When do they need an answer? 3 weeks. All right. Caleb? Vivian. Yeah. If I told you to take it, you would take it. If I told you not to, you would not take it. Am I right? She did not answer. Am I right, Vivian? You're right. I am not going to do that to you. Caleb, I'm not going to be the man who tells you what to do with your life. Your life is your life. You ran it into the ground once because you made a decision in a gas station bathroom without talking to me. You do not now, 8 years later, hand me the steering wheel and ask me where to go. That is not the deal. That was never going to be the deal. Then what is the deal? The deal is you tell me what you want. She looked at her tea. Caleb, I don't want the job. Why? Because if I take it, I am 50 miles from here. I am 2 hours from here. And for the first time in 8 years, I have a life I am not trying to run away from. And most of the reason I have that life is a man in this booth who I did not earn, who I do not some days think I am ever going to earn, but who I would like to keep trying to earn, because I have 32 years behind me of running from things, and I would like, with what is ahead of me, to stay in one place and see what happens. He drank his coffee. Then don't take it. Just like that. Just like that. You just said what you wanted. Do what you want. Caleb, Vivian, I'm going to tell you a thing. I am not going to ask you to stay. I am not going to tell you to stay. I'm going to tell you what I am doing, and you do with it what you do. I have been for 6 months building something. You know some of it. You don't know all of it. I am not going to tell you all of it. Not today. Maybe one day. I have, in the last 6 months, stopped thinking of myself as a man who is waiting for something to happen to him. I have started, instead, thinking of myself as a man who is making things happen. Not fast. Not loud. Just making them. One at a time. That is the life I'm trying to build. That is the life I want for my daughter. If you want to be near that life, you can be near it. On the terms we have already worked out, which are that you are not Lily's mother, you are not Lily's anything. You are a person who is in my life in a shape we are still, the two of us, figuring out the edges of. If you want that, stay. If you don't want that, take the job. I am not going to be hurt either way. I stopped, some time ago, being the kind of man who can be hurt by a person getting in a car and driving away. She was crying. She was not bothering to hide it. Carol walked past with the coffee pot, saw, and wisely kept moving. Caleb Mercer. What? That is the meanest thing anybody has ever said to me in my life. Good. I meant every word of it. I hate you. You don't. I don't. All right. She wiped her face. She laughed, short and wet. I'm not taking the job. Okay. You don't sound surprised. I'm not surprised. You're something. I am a lot of things today, Vivian. Surprised is not one of them. She laughed again. Caleb. Yeah. Can I meet your daughter? Properly. Not in a kitchen in a storm. Not as a passing officer. As a friend of yours. Just a friend. With a casserole or something. On her terms. In her house. Once. Just to see her. So that the first time she sees me after today is not a time where we are pretending we have never met. He sat with that. He sat with it a long time. Then he said, I have to talk to her first. Of course. She gets to say no. Of course. If she says no, you do not ask again. I won't. If she says yes, you come for 1 hour. You bring whatever you want. You leave before dinner. Next time is her idea or no time. Okay? I will tell you by Wednesday. Okay. He paid the bill. He drove home. The road was dry. The fields along the ridge were burnt a little at the edges from August. The corn, where there was corn, was head high. The trees over the Mercer Drive had thickened into the full heavy green they got in late summer, and the light coming through them was the light that makes men who were born in a valley feel, even if they do not say it, like they have been somewhere they will never quite be able to leave. Lily was at the porch rail watching for him because she had always watched for him, because that was what she did. He pulled up. She came down. He knelt. Bug, I need to ask you something. Okay? Officer Hale wants to come visit, to meet you properly. Not because she is a police officer, because she is a friend of mine. Lily looked at him for a long time. He watched her small face do a thing that was part her mother's mouth and part his eyes, and part her own self, working something out. He did not rush her. He had learned, over 7 years, that when Lily Mercer was working something out, the best thing to do was hold still until she was done. Daddy? Yeah. Is she the one you were sad about in the kitchen that day? Yes. Are you still sad about her? Sometimes. Is she sorry? She is. Does being sorry make it okay? It doesn't make it okay. It makes it the start of something. Oh, she thought. Daddy. Yeah. Is she a good person? He had not expected this question in exactly this form. He had prepared for a lot of questions. He had not prepared for this one. He looked at his daughter. He told her the truth because he had decided, the night she was born and more completely every year since, that he was not going to lie to his daughter about anything she was old enough to ask about. I don't know yet, Bug. I think she's trying to be. I think she has done things in her life that were not good, and she is, these days, trying to do better. I think that is most people. I think most people are somewhere in the middle of a long try. Lily considered. Okay, she can come. Are you sure? Yes. You don't have to talk to her if you don't want. I will. Bug. Yeah. Thank you for being brave. I'm brave a lot, Daddy. You are. I get it from you. He did not answer her because if he answered her, he was going to not make it into the house, and he had a casserole to reheat, and he had a child to feed. He picked her up, even though she was too big for it, and he carried her up the porch steps, and the porch creaked in exactly the place it always creaked. And he thought, walking through his own front door with his daughter in his arms, that the thing he had been building, brick by brick, for the last 6 months, had a shape now. It was not a complicated shape. It was the shape of a porch you could stand on, and a kitchen you could feed a child in, and a pasture you could cut yourself, and a fence line a friend would, without being asked, stand back up for you in a storm. It was not a kingdom. It was not revenge. It was a life. Vivian came on a Thursday at 4 with a dish of baked ziti covered in foil and a small wrapped book. She parked at the end of the drive and walked up, not in uniform, in jeans and a plain cotton shirt, her hair down. Lily met her on the porch. Caleb stayed a step behind, hands in his pockets, letting his daughter do what his daughter was going to do. Hi, Officer Hale. Hi, Lily. My daddy said I can call you Vivian. You can. Okay. Hi, Vivian. Hi, Lily. Is that for me? The book is for you. The ziti is for everybody. I didn't know if your dad was a ziti person. Daddy is a ziti person. He is a pizza person, and a ziti person, and a chili person, and not an egg salad person. Got it. What's the book? Open it. Lily unwrapped the book carefully because Lily did not rip wrapping paper, because Lily had decided at 4 that wrapping paper could be reused if handled with respect. The book was a chapter book about a girl who lived on a farm and raised a calf who grew up to win a blue ribbon and then was not sold for meat because the family had decided the calf was part of the family. Caleb had never heard of the book. He looked at Vivian. Vivian looked at him. She had, he understood, spent some time on this. I like cows, Lily said, which was not a thing Caleb had ever heard her say before, but which was apparently, from the set of her mouth, going to be a thing she said now. I figured. Thank you, Vivian. You're welcome, Lily. Come in. They went in. Vivian sat at the kitchen table. Caleb put the ziti in the oven to keep it warm. Lily sat down across from Vivian with her new book open in front of her, and she read to herself the first paragraph, moving her lips on the harder words. Vivian did not interrupt her. She drank the water he had poured her. She looked with great care at everything in the kitchen that was not Lily, so that Lily could read in peace. She looked at the crayon drawings on the refrigerator. She looked at the framed picture of Caleb's mother on the wall. She looked, longest, at a small framed photograph on the shelf above the stove, which Caleb had not, in 8 years, moved. A picture of his mother holding a newborn Caleb in her arms, in this kitchen, in the summer of 1993, both of them laughing at something out of frame. When Lily finished her paragraph, she looked up. Vivian. Yeah. My daddy says you are somewhere in the middle of a long try. Vivian's eyes flickered once to Caleb. Caleb did not move. He did not nod. He did not shake his head. He had told his daughter the truth, and he was not going to edit it for company. I am, Vivian said carefully. I think that's a pretty accurate way of saying it. Is it going okay? Some days. That's how it is for me, too, with my spelling test. Vivian laughed, a short, startled laugh. Spelling tests are hard. Spelling tests are very hard. The word I missed last week was believe. That's a hard one. I get it wrong all the time. I'm going to get it right this week. I bet you are. I have been practicing. What helps you remember? Daddy told me it's Believe, like believe has a lie in the middle of it. Vivian did not say anything for a second. Then she said very quietly, that is a very good way to remember it. Thank you. Vivian stayed an hour exactly. She did not stay a minute past. She helped Caleb set the table because Lily, studying her book again, had waved them off. She did not eat. She kissed the top of Lily's head because Lily had, at the end, stood up and hugged her, which Caleb had not told her to do and which Lily had decided on her own. She said goodbye to Caleb at the door in a voice that was level and steady and not, in any way he could accuse her of, performing anything. Thank you, Caleb. Drive safe. I will. She walked down the porch steps. She got in her car. She drove down the gravel drive. She did not, on the way down, look back. He respected this. It was the last small gift he had been waiting for her to give him, and she had, at last, given it. He closed the door. Lily was at the table with her face in her book. Bug. Yeah. What did you think? She considered. She has kind eyes. Yeah. But her mouth goes down at the sides when she tries not to cry. Yeah, Bug, it does. Is she going to come back? I don't know yet. If you want her to, she can. If you don't, she won't. I want her to. Okay? Not a lot. Sometimes. Okay. Once a month. Once a month. Is that fair? That is very fair. She went back to her book. He sat down at the table across from his daughter. Outside, the late summer light was coming in through the kitchen window, soft and yellow, and a fly was bumping against the screen in the slow, resigned way flies bumped in August. And from down by the barn, a rooster Caleb had never managed to cull was yelling at something that was probably not there. The lawsuit settled in October. First Valley Savings agreed to return the back 40 with clean title. They agreed to a full accounting of the restructured loan with interest, which came out to a number Caleb did not, when he heard it, quite believe. They agreed to identify and contact, at their cost, 17 other farmers in the valley who had signed similar documents in the Curtis Crane era, and to offer each of them review and remediation. Curtis Crane, as Rachel had predicted, kept his license and lost everything else that mattered. He was, by November, working as an assistant branch manager at a savings and loan in a town 60 miles south where nobody knew him and where he would, for the rest of his working life, be managed by a man 20 years younger than he was. A quarter of the punitive award went, as Caleb had asked, to a farm aid fund at the state level with no name on it. The fund that year gave 15 small grants to small farms in the region. One of them went to a widow in the next county over who had lost her husband in April and was trying to keep her dairy herd. She never knew where the money came from. Caleb preferred it that way. The rest of the money Caleb put, almost entirely, into the farm. He replaced the barn roof. He rebuilt the tractor. He rebuilt the fence around the whole south pasture. He paid off the mortgage his father had been carrying on the house, with enough left over to put $50,000 in an account in Lily's name, in a town she had never been to, under the care of a trustee who was a friend of Rachel DeLuca's. The account was a college account. It was also, if college did not happen, a life account. He did not tell Lily. He would tell her when she was 18. He would tell her the way his grandfather had told him things, which was quietly, and once, and then never again. He did not buy anything for himself. He did not buy a new truck. He kept the old one. The heater still worked half the time. Lily did not complain. Vivian came once a month. Sometimes she came for an hour. Sometimes she came for dinner. In December, she came for Lily's birthday, which was the 18th, and she brought, at Lily's specific request relayed through Caleb, a box of art supplies and a small wrapped parcel, which turned out to be, when Lily opened it, a hand-knit wool hat. The hat was slightly uneven at the brim. Vivian had made it herself. Lily put it on and did not take it off for 2 days. On Christmas Eve, Caleb and Lily drove down to Vivian's little gray house on 4th Street in Claymont and had dinner. Vivian had made a roast. It was not, strictly speaking, a good roast. Vivian was a working woman who did not cook much. Lily, with great gravity, pronounced it very good. Vivian laughed, for the first time that evening, and Caleb laughed. And Lily, very pleased with herself, ate her slightly overdone roast with both hands and got butter on her chin. He did not, that night, stay late. He drove home with his daughter asleep against the door of the truck, her new hat pulled down over her ears, and he pulled into his own drive under a sky that had gone absolutely clear and was full of stars. And he carried his daughter up the porch steps and into the house and laid her in her bed, and he stood over her a long minute, watching her breathe the slow, serious way she breathed. And he thought about the day a year ago when he had stood in a kitchen and heard a name he had not, until that moment, ever held. Emma. He thought about her. He thought about her every day. He did not, some days, think about her for very long. He did not some days know what there was to think. She had not lived. She had for a little while been. She was in the strange way of these things, his daughter, and she was not his daughter, and she was a thing that had happened, and she was, now, a thing that would always have happened. He was not anymore angry about her. He was not anymore exactly sad about her. What he was, he thought, sitting on the edge of Lily's bed in the dark, was a man who had had a daughter, and then had not, and then had had another daughter, and who had decided over the course of a year that the right way to honor the first was to raise the second, which was the only thing he could do, and the only thing the dead ever asked of the living. He bent down. He kissed the top of Lily's head. She did not wake. She breathed her long, even breaths. He went downstairs. He made a cup of tea. He sat at the kitchen table. He looked, a long time, at the grease mark on the wall from the day Owen had called him, the mark he had never quite gotten clean. He had decided, somewhere along the way, to leave it there. It was, he thought, as good a reminder as any. The porch creaked. He looked up. It was nobody. It was the wind. It was the house. He thought about his father. He thought about what his father would have made of this year. He thought his father would have sat at this table with a jelly glass of whiskey and not said much. He would have, maybe, at the very end said, "Son, you did it." And then he would have gone out on the porch to smoke the one cigarette he still smoked on Christmas Eve, and he would not have said anything else about it, because he was a Mercer man, and Mercer men did not say things twice. Caleb sat with his tea. He thought about the way this town had, for 100 years, taught its men to bow their heads. He thought about the way his father had bowed his. He thought about the way he had, for 8 years, bowed his own. He thought about what you could learn, if you were lucky, from one winter, one blizzard, one woman's face in a ditched cruiser, one phone call from an old friend, one box of papers. He thought that most people in the world were doing, most of the time, what Vivian had said she was doing. They were somewhere in the middle of a long try. He thought that a lot of them would not make it through. He thought that a lot of them would, and that the only real difference between the two was whether they decided, on some ordinary Tuesday, that the life they had been handed was not the only life they were going to get. He thought that the quiet, ordinary men and women of 100 small valleys all over the country had been, for generations, overlooked, because overlooked was what the powerful needed them to be. He thought overlooked was not the same thing as weak. He thought it was sometimes the same thing as patient. He thought patient, over a long enough stretch of years, could unmake almost any wall that had been built by fear. He thought his daughter was going to grow up in a different house than he had grown up in. He thought that was enough. He finished his tea. He washed the cup. He put it in the rack. He turned off the kitchen light. He walked through the dark hallway, feeling the grain of the wood under his bare feet, knowing every creak, knowing which step to skip. He went up the stairs. He paused, for 1 second, at the door of his daughter's room. He listened to her breathe. She was not a trophy. She was not a prize. She was not what he had won. She was what he had been working for all along, and what he had on the day she was born and every day since, been trying to be worthy of. He went to his own bed. He lay down. He put one hand behind his head. He put the other flat on his stomach. He looked at the ceiling where a water stain had, 8 months ago, been growing, and where now, because he had fixed the roof, there was no water stain at all, just the old plaster, clean and dry. Outside, over the ridge, the stars moved the way stars moved, which was patiently and without needing to be looked at. Inside, in the small, warm, repaired house of a man who had once believed he was the thing his town said he was, and had, finally, decided otherwise, the quiet worker in his chest, who had been walking since February and who had laid a great many bricks, sat down at last and looked around at what he had made and rested. He was still there. He would always be there now. A man did not, once he had woken the thing up, ever really put it back to sleep. But he could, on the good nights, when his daughter was breathing evenly in the next room and the house was quiet and the valley had, for the first time in a long time, begun to turn its face toward him instead of away, let the worker sit a while. Caleb Mercer closed his eyes. He slept. Outside on the Mercier farm, at the edge of a forgotten town, in a valley that had, for generations, been teaching its men to be small, the first light of Christmas morning came over the ridge, slow and patient, and in no particular hurry, the way all the things worth waiting for, in the end, come.